Empress's cultivation was not high, only at second-degree realm first level. Under the attack of Wang Yueli's profound energy, she actually felt ill at ease as the qi and blood in her chest surged and she almost threw up blood. Unbelievably, she glanced at Wang Yueli. You really. The other people present, too, displayed a shocked expression. Emperor asked, astonishing, "This is really second-degree realm practitioner's qi. How is this possible? Leah, you've really broken through to the second-degree realm?" Wang Yueli nodded. "That's right. The day when 7th Princess came over, I had just successfully broken through. Initially I was thinking that since your majesties are both my seniors, I should enter the palace to inform you of this happy occasion. But because 7th Princess had almost interrupted my advancement, the profound energy within was unstable, so during this entire duration, I had been cultivating in secrecy." Emperor and Empress Dowager crossed eyes and gave out a joyous expression. 14 years old and you've already broke through to the second-degree realm. Even among 6th-grade talents practitioners, this is very hard to find. Leah is indeed Bai Liu Feng's daughter. Your talent is extraordinary. Empress Dowager added, "Leah is really something. Your future is laid with boundless prospects and you'd definitely chase up to your father." Hearing the Emperor and Empress Dowager's praises, Empress's face had turned steely green. Li Shuer had been stripped of the princess title and had been impounded in the isolated palace. Even the Empress was not given a chance to see her. So what they knew was after Li Shuer had went to find trouble with Wang Yueli, she had ended up in that state. But they did not know the actual events that had happened. She had never thought that Wang Yueli had coincidentally just broke through to the second-degree realm on that day. The few of them felt something bad was going to happen. Wang Yueli's innate talent had originally surpassed Li Morjuan, and she had even taken a step forwards and broke through to the second-degree realm. In this way, she had already left the crown prince behind. As for Li Shuer and the others, they were far more inferior. As her power grew larger, it would become more difficult to deal with her. Originally their intent was to use this opportunity to force Wang Yueli into a dead end. Even if they were not able to give her a death sentence, at least they should be able to lock her in the prison and secretly deal with her. But who would have expected that there was such a plot twist? Such a talented young lady was a huge asset to the entire South Yu Kingdom. She was also the future hope for invigorating the country, so Emperor would definitely not bear to sentence her heavily. As expected, after Emperor and Empress Dowager had showered her with praises, the look they gave towards Wang Yueli had turned even more amiable. "Leah, I have now understood the situation that you had explained. Shuer was indeed too much. The consequences of interrupting one's advancement is very serious. It is normal that you are upset with her, and as for her getting injured from the reserve impact of your profound energy, she can only blame herself for her own rashness." Empress could tell that the Emperor had no intention of pursuing the matter and hurriedly added, "Your Majesty, we have yet to investigate the true facts of this matter yet. Even if Shuer was at fault in the first place, I am not blaming Bai Ruoli for hurting her. But she cannot do such things to Shuer. Isn't that throwing our royal family's face onto the ground to stomp? This. Leah, don't blame me for being calculative, but this matter, you absolutely must give me an explanation." Emperor immediately became hesitant. Wang Yueli maintained her innocent look. "Your Majesties, you had mentioned this several times that I had harmed Li Shuer. I really don't know what's going on. Can't you make it any clearer? You can also listen on." With this, Empress was once again held back. That's right, why did she forget again? If that shameless thing that happened to Li Shuer were to spread out, the consequences would be dire. In future, who would dare to marry Li Shuer? Empress had been hoping that Li Shuer would be able to join the big family in Skycloud City, find a good husband and help the crown prince add some points to his status. However, she was not willing to let Wang Yueli off so easily. Just as she was hesitating, Wang Yueli spoke out. "Your Majesty, is there something that you cannot speak of? Or it is something difficult to say out? Otherwise shall we do it this way? Since you insist that I had harmed 7th Princess, why not ask her out and have a confrontation directly? Otherwise, get her bodyguards. I have a straight foot and is not afraid of a crooked shoe." The Empress hesitated again. Confrontation? How could she confront? Ever since Li Shuai got into that matter, she had always been locked up in the isolation palace and her emotions were obviously not stable. If they were to get her to the main hall, it was possible that the minute she opened her mouth, she would narrate everything out right away. In this way, how was she going to maintain her reputation? As for those bodyguards, in order to hide the secret that Li Shuai had lost his chastity, the emperor and empress had already ordered those men to death on that fateful day. Now where were they going to look for witness? Empress looked at Wang Yueli's expression that resembled a smile and yet not a smile and knew that she must be ridiculing her from the depths of her heart, and that angered her even further. After half a day, she could only force this sentence out, Shuai. Ever since the day that Shuai returned injured, she had been recuperating quietly. How can we let her come out and be agitated by you? As for those bodyguards, all of them have their duties, so how could we just ask them out from their official work, just like that? Wang Yueli couldn't help but let out a sniggering sound. Your Majesty, isn't what you said just too funny? Seventh princess reported against me but don't dare to come out to confront me. As for those bodyguards, they also don't dare to come out and face me. Just based on this, you still dare to claim that you're not slandering me? Otherwise, could it be that Li Shuai had done something shameless and don't dare to show her face? What something shameless? Don't you dare to sprout words blindly? Empress's face turned pale white as she denied vehemently. Wang Yueli retorted, since it's nothing shameless, then why are you hemming and hawing? Since Empress Dowager is also here, why not just invite 7th Princess here and let Empress Dowager to preside over justice for us? Empress Dowager frowned as she had long tired of their endless bickering. At this moment, she immediately continued, what Leah said is correct. Empress, since you maintain what you had said, why not just ask the person involved to come out and tell the truth? I have heard that Shuai's skin was burnt. As a practitioner, she should have recovered after so many days of rest, so go and ask her to come to the main hall. Saying that, she turned her head and commanded, men, go and invite 7th. No. Empress hastily stood up and stopped the eunuch who was preparing to send the order. Empress Dowager felt something was amiss and the expression on her face sunk. Empress, what's the meaning of this? Could it be that it was exactly as Leah had said, you're just slandering her? That's not true, Your Highness. Empress did not know how to respond as she had scolded Wang Yueli 100,000 times in her heart. This wretched lass, she was entirely filled with evil intentions. She knew that was not able to openly talk about Li Shuai's matter in public and had purposely dragged the Empress Dowager to partake in this. This time, how was she going to get out of this situation? You can also listen on. The Empress felt that she was treated unjustly. This matter was obviously caused by Wang Yueli. Li Shuai had said it herself that it was Wang Yueli who had fed her with the abstinence pill, thus causing her to create such a scandal. However, there was nothing the Empress could do about it as Li Shuai could not come out to testify against her. Not only was she not able to convict Wang Yueli of the crime, now it seemed that in the Empress Dowager's eyes, she had intentionally set Wang Yueli up in order to frame her. But whatever she had said was the entire truth. Just as Empress was incomparably oppressed, Emperor's voice rang across the hall. Forget it, Empress. This matter has now come to an end. After he said that to the Empress, he turned towards the Empress Dowager. Queen Mother, Empress only had one daughter Shuai, and now that she's injured, it is only natural that Empress is anxious about her. And it is true that Shuai had indeed got injured at the valiant martial manner, so it's not considered a slander. However, as Leah did not do it on purpose, this matter, let's just let it pass. Leah, what do you think? Emperor had been listening and thinking for quite some time. In actual fact, he did have his suspicions on Wang Yueli as well. Li Shuai was trapped so badly, and as she had just stepped out of the valiant martial manner, Wang Yueli was naturally the main suspect. The only thing Emperor could not figure out was even if Wang Yueli had just advanced, she was only at the 2nd degree realm first stage. Li Shuai's cultivation was much higher than hers, not to mention that she had brought along so many outstanding golden scaled guards along. Besides that, Wang Yueli had no reason to trick Li Shuai. In this case, there was a possibility that Leah was being framed, perhaps. Li Shuai had offended someone in Sky Cloud City and that party had sent someone here to exact revenge? Under the circumstances that there wasn't sufficient evidence to pin the crime onto Wang Yueli, if Li Moying were to return in future, he would definitely fly into a rage. Even without Li Moying, just based on Wang Yueli's innate gift alone, Emperor had not wanted to offend her too much. More importantly, Li Shuai and the men had paraded themselves ostentatiously about in town, so this matter absolutely cannot be publicized. If word really got out, then the person who would lose out is Li Shuai, and the ones to make a spectacle of themselves would be the entire royal family. Weighing the pros and cons, Emperor chose to keep the peace. Empress unbelievably raised her head. "Your Majesty, how can we do that? Shuai had been taken such a big disadvantage, we simply cannot let this little slut. Shut your gap. I have already said let the matter rest. This was originally Shuai's fault. Must you bring up what she did until everyone finds out about it before you will let matters rest?" Empress looked like she was stuck by lighting and lowered her head disappointedly. Although the Emperor didn't make it clear, seemingly hinting that it was Shuai's fault for seeking revenge at the valiant martial manner. But in the ears of the Empress, the Emperor was clearly warning her that Shuai's loss of chastity absolutely cannot be revealed. Empress knew that the Emperor had to retain the reputation of the royal family and had chosen to forsake Li Shuai. Although she was both furious and anxious, but she could only accept this outcome. Wang Yueli saw the Empress's dejected look and smiling added, "Since that's the case, I thank your Majesty for pronouncing my innocence. Leah is utmost grateful." But what? Emperor inquired. Wang Yueli smiled as she claimed, "While 7th Princess was visiting my manor, she had practically wrecked the walls and backyard. So my rooms over that area cannot be used for residence anymore. I'm just a pauper, where would I find money to fix my house? Initially I had intended to enter the palace to look for the 7th Princess for compensation. Now using this opportunity, I would like to pay her a visit, and on the way, discuss with her about this. You can also listen on." "Discuss? What about?" Empress questioned in a guarded manner. Every single time Wang Yueli opened her mouth, the Empress's heart would jump. This wretched lass was full of wretched ideas, so every single time she spoke, it would be something bad, as though she was born to obstruct her. Undeniably, the Empress had learnt her lesson well and became wiser. As expected, Wang Yueli replied, "Of course it would be to discuss on compensation. Your Majesty, as you can see, my house had collapsed and naturally it must be rebuilt. As for the servants in my manor, they were beaten up so badly that some are maimed or seriously injured. I must naturally pay for their compensation payment. Besides, I was scared stiff by 7th Princess who almost caused my advancement to fail. Because of that, I am still suffering from internal injury, so I would need to spend money to pay for my treatment, right?" When the Empress heard these, she almost fainted on the spot. She had already been disadvantaged and Li Shuai had already become this manner, and now all she could do was to suffer in silence and give way to Wang Yueli. She had never expected that this lass would not be satisfied with small gains. Now, she still expected to be compensated. Empress was angered to the max as she coldly sneered, "You want compensation? Fat hope. Impossible." Wang Yueli smiled, "Your Majesty, I'm not asking you for compensation, your words cannot be counted. I'll directly negotiate with 7th Princess. Quickly bring me to her chamber to look for her." Empress's heart thumped hard, and almost instantaneously she understood her motive for coming. This lass's motive was not for any compensation but to reveal the fact that Li Shuai had lost her chastity. If she were to bring her to look for Li Shuai, Empress Dowager, and the rest would naturally follow suit. However, Li Shuai was now in the isolation palace, so how was she going to explain this to the Empress Dowager? She hurriedly shook her head, "No way, we can't go. Shuai had suffered serious injuries and needs to recuperate quietly, you're not allowed to go and disturb her." Wang Yueli's expressed grew chiller as she questioned, "Your Majesty, what do you mean? Firstly, you maligned me for harming 7th Princess and yet you don't allow me to confront her. Now 7th Princess had wrecked my valiant martial manner and you refuse to let me clear things up with her nor compensate me. What is this? Am I destined to let other people bully? You The Empress was interrogated by her countless queries, causing her chest to rage with pain. Wang Yueli was indeed a demon, who was capable of bullying her. She had been the one who was bullying others and using her gift of the gap. Others had no chance to rebut nor redress their injustice. For that one moment, the Empress really wanted to speak out the entire truth, slapping Wang Yueli viciously on the face. But after she had calmed down, she chose to give in. How could she bear to use her daughter's reputation as a joke? So this injustice, even if she couldn't take it, she still must. All right, consider it as Shue's wrongdoing. Let me, her mother, help her compensate you. How much do you want? Wang Yueli pursed her lips and thought for a moment before she replied, since seventh princess was also injured and seemed quite pitiful, then I'll ask for lesser. 300,000 taels of gold then. How much did you say? The Empress could not believe her ears. Wang Yueli repeated once again, 300,000 taels of gold. That's daylight robbery. Is your manor made of gold? Why do you need that much money? She could not suppress her anger any further and blew up. Even a brand new mansion located in the country's best position merely costed 10,000 taels of gold, and to construct a new palace within the royal palace was merely 20,000 taels of gold. Wang Yueli actually asked for 300,000 taels? You can also listen on. Even the Emperor's face displayed some signs of unhappiness. Leah, you've never run a household before, so you won't know how much the construction of a home costs. Later I'll get someone from the Ministry of Revenue to drop by the Valiant Marshal Manor to ascertain the damages in your manor and compensate you accordingly. Emperor suggested this compromised proposal. Empress immediately put her heart at ease. Since Emperor had already spoken, this wretched lass should know when to stop. However, Wang Yueli still shook her head. How can we do that? If the Ministry of Revenue were to come and check and just compensate a 3 or 5,000 taels, then what should I do? 3 or 5,000 taels isn't enough. Who do you think you are? How dare you demand an exorbitant price in the Emperor's presence? Wang Yueli patted her chest, displaying a frightened expression, as though she was shocked by the Empress's aggressive attitude. Your Majesty, the price I had stated is fair and reasonable. Did you know about this? When seventh princess came to the manor, I was in closed-door cultivation in the study room, and the courtyard had been set up with a fourth-tier spirit-gathering array. This array was not only set up using fourth-tier materials, it must be driven by fourth-grade crystals before it can work. However, seventh princess found a team of golden-scaled guards and used all their might to attack the array. Not only did they deplete all the crystal's energy, because of that, it had also broke the array completely, and all those materials cannot be reused. If I were to bring those fourth-tier materials to the auction house, it would at least be auctioned for 300,000 taels of gold. Not forgetting now that the array is broken, where am I going to find such a high-level array master to help me set up another array? I'm just asking for compensation for the array's materials, so I'm already giving a major discount, all right. How did it turn out to be like this? Empress was dumbfounded as beads of perspiration started to form on her forehead. If what Wang Yueli said was true, then Li Shuai would have gotten herself into hot soup this time. 300,000 taels of gold. If it had been 2 months ago, Empress would have been able to come out with it. But as Crown Prince was swindled at Thousand Treasure Pavilion previously, she had taken out all her fortune to subsidize him, and she had not much left. This time, where was she going to find money to compensate? Just as Empress was loaded with anxiety, not knowing how to respond, suddenly a sound of heavy coughing echoed from behind. Immediately following that, someone spoke out, "Third Miss Bai, you're really smart at swindling money. Are you really in that much need? From what I see, it doesn't seem to be that case. Didn't you, just a few days ago, just stole a huge amount of treasures from the royal treasury?" The person who spoke was the Imperial Tutor. His voice sounded slightly hoarse because when the self-destruction mechanism in the royal treasury was activated, it quickly triggered the flame mechanism. The smog produced was too much, and as he had been the first to charge through, the ash had fumigated his throat, causing hoarseness. Until today, he had not recovered. When Wang Yueli heard his voice, the sides of her lips curled into an evident smile as she slowly turned around. She knew that Imperial Tutor was definitely not going to sit there just to watch a show. She had set him up in the royal treasury, so he would definitely take revenge. Moreover, since the royal treasury had met with a mishap, it was natural that the mastermind must be dug out. If Imperial Tutor didn't find trouble for her, that would become heaven's strangest occurrence. In actual fact, Imperial Tutor had indeed been thinking in this way. He had his own reason for not creating trouble with Wang Ruoli at the first timing. The reason was because when he and Crown Prince had entered the royal treasury, they had not obtained the Emperor's permission. Truth be told, several years ago, Crown Prince and Imperial Tutor had already conspired with the other fourth-degree realm expert, who was in charge of protecting the royal treasury. You can also listen on. Crown Prince needed a lot of resources if he wanted to cultivate, hence, he had set his sights long ago on the royal treasury and had been fishing money from the treasury. Including the huge debt that he had incurred from Thousand Treasures Pavilion, he had stolen a part of from the treasury before he could clear it entirely. Imperial Tutor was worried that Emperor would check in detail on the cause and effect, causing their plot to be discovered, so he hadn't dared to speak directly about the matter first. His aim in appearing today was firstly to see Empress raising difficult issues regarding Li Shui's injury, and after Wang Ruoli was forced to admit her guilt, would he then use the situation to his advantage and talk about the royal treasury's incident. In this way, Emperor had already shown his rage regarding Li Shui's matter, and in his mind, he had already considered Wang Ruoli as an evil person. So there was a huge possibility that he would not check out the details that had happened in the royal treasury and just directly sentence Wang Ruoli in rage. Although Imperial Tutor's scheme was intricate, but he had never expected that the progression would be so unfavorable. Firstly, Wang Ruoli managed to shut Empress's mouth using Li Shui's reputation as a stake, as she had not dared to reveal the truth about that manner. From there, she managed to turn the situation around, not only just clearing her innocence, and in turn painting Li Shui as an evildor, exposing her mean ways in front of everyone, and as for herself, she had been turned into the world's most innocent party who was bullied by everyone. Next, Wang Ruoli had revealed her progression into second-degree realms cultivation, causing the Emperor to see her in new light and not daring to pin a crime on her casually. In this way, Imperial Tutor's scheme had completely came to a standstill. If things were to continue in this manner, Wang Ruoli would then successfully get herself out of this crime and made Empress pay a huge compensation. Imperial Tutor was no longer able to remain silent and fought to speak out first. Bai Ruoli, even if 7th Princess's injury was not caused directly by you, how about the matter that had happened in the royal treasury several days ago? How are you going to explain about that? Wang Ruoli put on a blank look as she said, Imperial Tutor sir, I don't understand what you mean. Why are all of you trying to make up some absurd stuff to slander me? What had happened in the royal treasury? And what does it have to do with me? Stop denying. Imperial Tutor sneered. Several days ago, the bodyguard dressed in black beside you had broken into the royal treasury in big to steal the treasures in the treasury. In the end, I had discovered this, and seeing that you were unable to escape, you emptied the treasury clean and made the entire royal treasury collapse. Now, because of the both of you, all the spirit stones and magical beast cores have been buried underground, and God knows how long we will need in order to get it all out. Our royal treasury is now completely empty, and the main mastermind is you, Bai Ruoli. Imperial Tutor's face was solemn and his tone was severe. As he spoke, he held his chest in an agitated manner, and even his beard was sticking up. When Emperor heard this, his hand trembled as he smashed the teacup onto the ground. What? Imperial Tutor, you are saying, the destruction of the royal treasury was done by Leah? How can that be? Why would she go and steal from the royal treasury? And how was it possible that she could destroy the royal treasury? Imperial Tutor heaved a sigh as his expression sunk. Your Majesty, several days ago after the treasury was buried into the ground, you had questioned me a number of times and I had maintained my silence. That was because this entire matter was just too unimaginable. If it wasn't for the fact that I had witnessed it personally, I wouldn't believe it as well. And this reckless thief is actually Bai Ruoli. You can also listen on. Emperor could not believe his ears and hurriedly questioned, Imperial Tutor, what's going on? Imperial Tutor shot Wang Ruoli a glance and continued, Yesterday while Crown Prince and I were making our way back to the palace, we saw a suspicious figure from afar. We were worried that this person was hatching evil plots, so we followed him. We had never expected that his destination would be the royal treasury. Besides that, he also killed a few golden-scaled guards and sneakily smuggled into the treasury. Crown Prince and I immediately took chase and had an intense fight with him. Just as the thief was about to be taken down, Bai Ruoli appeared. Besides using sneaky moves, she also activated the mechanisms in the treasury. We then realized that this thief was incited by Bai Ruoli to steal the items at the royal treasury. Bai Ruoli realized that she was unable to defeat us and attempted to escape, but we were hot on their tails. Out of sheer desperation, not knowing how she managed to do it, but she actually activated the self-destruction mechanism. The few of us were almost buried alive inside and barely escaped by inches. However, all the treasures in the treasury were all buried underground. As Imperial Tutor was depicting it, his expression was filled with grief and indignation. Your Majesty, you've always treated Third Miss Bai rather well, but she actually repaid you in this manner. She actually did such sneaky things behind your back. Moreover, when she realized that she was unable to bear the responsibility, she actually buried all the treasures that our kingdom had accumulated over the few hundred years. This is simply wanting our kingdom to be destroyed. His words seemed devoted to righteousness that inspired reverence, and momentarily, the emperor was scared stiff. Emperor's eyes widened with shock as he raged. Such a matter actually happened. No wonder when you and the Crown Prince escaped from the treasury, both of you were heavily injured. Emperor turned around and interrogated Wang Yueli. Bai Ruoli, what Imperial Tutor had said, is it true? A chilly glint flashed past Wang Yueli's eyes. Imperial Tutor was acting as a thief calling thief. They obviously lured Mo Yi to the royal treasury but had made it look like he was there to steal. Such a story was rather reasonable, but unfortunately no matter how well the story flowed, in Wang Yueli's eyes, it was full of loopholes. Besides that, Wang Yueli already expected that Imperial Tutor and the Crown Prince had already been in cahoots with the guards at the treasury. Otherwise, how would they be able to freely debauch the royal treasury and even set up a trap to capture Mo Yi? Even a ghost would not believe this. Originally, the Imperial Tutor and the Crown Prince had already been fixed by Wang Yueli to a terrible state, and because she was busy with her cultivation, so she didn't have any time to hit them when they're down. But who would have expected that the Imperial Tutor had that much guts? Even after being fixed by her many times, he had not learnt his lesson and still dared to splash dirty water on her. Since that's the case, then don't blame her for not standing on ceremony. Just hope that the Imperial Tutor and the Crown Prince would not come crying and begging her. Wang Yueli sniggered coldly and replied, Imperial Tutor, please take responsibility for your word. That day, it was the Crown Prince who went to Thousand Treasure Pavilion to wreck my shop. Besides that, he also took away more than 10 boxes of goods. My bodyguard, Mo Yi, went after them in order to retrieve back the goods, which was why he followed the Crown Prince's men all the way to the royal treasury. The Crown Prince misused his status to buy things without paying, which had already raised eyebrows, and the weirdest thing was he actually moved the stuff into the royal treasury. I found it strange on why the Crown Prince would head towards the royal treasury instead. This was South Yu Kingdom's national treasury and not Crown Prince, your private treasury. When the Crown Prince heard these words, he wiggled around in the stretcher as though he was trying to get up, pointing his finger against her nose to scold her. You can also listen on. Unfortunately, no matter how much energy the Crown Prince exerted, his forehead was filled with sweat, and in the end, he was still unable to move, so he could only clench his teeth while hissing, Bai Ruoli, what do you mean? How dare you slander me like this? Wang Yueli replied, I don't mean anything, just telling the truth only. Crown Prince retorted, this is pure slander. I was obviously captured by your gua, cough cough. Crown Prince was infuriated by Wang Yueli, and in a moment of fury, he almost spilled out the truth, so Imperial Tutor pretended to cough to stop him from continuing. Crown Prince abruptly regained his senses and hastily shut his mouth. Wang Yueli silent signed a sense of regret, but she only raised her brows and asked, Your Highness, why did you stop? What did my bodyguard do to you? Imperial Tutor sneered, Bai Ruoli, don't try to quibble. Crown Prince is the heir apparent to the throne, so what would he see in that miserly shop of yours? And to snatch in broad daylight? Moreover, he moved the things to the royal treasury? For what reason would Bai do that for? That's right, I was bewildered as well. In the normal course of events, Crown Prince wouldn't do such things, unless he had some schemes in mind. For example, he may have felt that His Majesty had been sitting on the throne for too long a time, and he cannot wait to ascend the throne, so he treated the royal treasury as his own. That's venomous slander. Crown Prince didn't expect her to say that as he furiously jumped up from the stretched and fell heavily back on it. Bai Ruoli, how dare you speak at will? I will never let you off. Saying that, he struggled to get up. Imperial Father, I am innocent. Please don't listen to Bai Ruoli's nonsense. I had never had this thinking at all. She knew that she was unable to get off the hook, so she thought of this malicious way to change the subject. Please investigate properly. Crown Prince stared at Wang Yueli, and that vision of sight seemed to be spewing out flames. Since ancient times, what emperors had been afraid of was someone coveting their title. As the Crown Prince, he was also afraid that other people would say that he cannot wait to ascend the throne, that he wished his imperial father to quickly die. Once this crime had been validated, dethronement of Crown Prince title was just a small matter. If things didn't go well, he might be locked up or even sentenced to death. Even if it was just a rumor without sufficient evidence, the consequences would be severe. After all, emperors were all suspicious, and once they suspect their own sons would conspire against them, then naturally the longer they see, the more unfavorable he would become and could easily pin various crimes onto his head. Crown Prince had never expected Wang Yueli to be so vicious. The minute she came, she gave him such a big hat to wear. This time, he was filled with anxiety until he almost threw up blood. Imperial Tutor also knew about the severity of this matter, so he immediately stood up and pointed against Wang Yueli's nose while admonishing her. What a sinister little lass you are, what nonsense are you sprouting? Crown Prince had always been loyal to His Majesty, so why would he do such a thing? Do you think that by saying that you would be able to drive a wedge between His Majesty and Crown Prince's relationship? He turned towards the Emperor and kneeled down. Your Majesty, please capture this audacious woman who dared to deceive you and offend the superiors. She's planning to slander Crown Prince. Comparing Crown Prince and Imperial Tutor's tension and anxiety, Wang Yueli was not pressured at all as she smiled steadily. Imperial Tutor, sir, Your Highness, what are you getting nervous over? I haven't finished my sentence. If you had never done such a thing, why would you be afraid of me talking about it? You can also listen on. Imperial Tutor choked, and as he lifted his head to look at the Emperor, he found his expression looking somewhat different, as though his suspicions had deepened. Wang Yueli's criticisms were simply too devastating. Imperial Tutor knew Wang Yueli was full of tricks and had wanted to shoo her away quickly, but after she had put it in that way, it looked like they were plotting a rebellion. He was extremely nervous that Wang Yueli would reveal the evidence. At once, the Emperor said, Leah, what do you know exactly? Don't be afraid and tell me everything. With me here, no one would dare to threaten you. Imperial Tutor had outsmarted himself, and as he felt nauseous in his heart, he had to continue bearing this feeling and swallowed back the words that he had wanted to rebuke Wang Yueli. At this juncture, no matter what he said was wrong and would only been deemed as having a guilty conscience, so he might as well let Wang Yueli continue speaking. Imperial Tutor shot a don't be rash gaze to Crown Prince, which stopped his rebuttal for now. It was a bogus matter, so what can Wang Yueli make up? By then, they would surely be able to find flaws in her conversation and would definitely be able to clear their names. Wang Yueli turned towards the Emperor and continued, reporting to Your Majesty, each of us sticks to our own version, so just based on our testimony, it's impossible to judge who is speaking the truth. But I have evidence. What evidence? Emperor inquired. That day when Crown Prince came to snatch goods from my store, the passerbys nearby had all witnessed it with their eyes. And the surrounding shops were more or less affected by the commotion. If Your Majesty were to send someone to check, you'd definitely find out the answer. Emperor nodded and summoned a guard. Go to Thousand Treasure Pavilion to check if what Leah said was true. Imperial Tutor sneered. This can be counted as evidence. Who knows if you had already colluded with the neighboring businesses so as to let them be witnesses for you? Wang Yueli smiled indifferently. Whether it's collusion or not, His Majesty will be able to judge. Imperial Tutor's words have no substance behind it, so how accurate could that be? Imperial Tutor came to a standstill because he was perceived once again as though he held a guilty conscience. Whatever he said didn't sound right. However, besides Imperial Tutor, another person couldn't figure it out. Empress Dowager raised her eyebrow. Leah, it's not that I don't believe you. But the Crown Prince's character had always been pretty good, and he had never shown this kind of behavior of forcibly occupying other people's assets previously. Even if your 1,000 treasure pavilion was the largest auction house in the kingdom, what motive did he had to risk the danger of being disdained by others and rob your store? Wang Yueli replied, Your Highness, there's something that you don't know of. 2 months ago, Crown Prince had once participated in 1,000 treasure pavilions auction and successfully bided for a set of profound armor. However, after he bided, he claimed that 1,000 treasure pavilion was fraudulent, and not only did he not pay up, he also prepared to snatch the set, but luckily he was stopped by our guards. Subsequently, he got to know that 1,000 treasure pavilion was gifted to me by Prince Yu Wang, and as he had always harbored hard feelings, he came forward to seek revenge while Prince Yu Wang was not around. Oh! Such a matter really happened? Yes. Many people had participated in the auction, not only the royalties from our South Yu Kingdom, even the royalty from neighboring countries had sent their men here to take part in it. This matter was widely known, so Your Majesty can go ahead and send someone to investigate. Emperor immediately sent another person out to investigate. At this moment, even though the investigation had not been completed, but in the Emperor's heart, he had already believed most of this. No matter how much preparation Wang Yueli had, it was impossible for her to have bribed the neighboring royal family. You can also listen on. Not only that, in the Emperor's heart, he was extremely dissatisfied with the Crown Prince. To renegade on a debt after taking part in an auction, how could a Crown Prince of a nation act in this way? He was simply like a hooligan. If word was to spread, it would definitely become a joke to anyone. If it was just embarrassment in normal times, he can forego this, but this round, Wang Yueli had mentioned that it was in front of the neighboring royalty's face. Wouldn't this make the royal family of the South Yu Kingdom become a laughingstock in front of other countries' royalties? Imperial Tutor could tell that Emperor was extremely dissatisfied and hastily added, Bai Ruoli, stop trying to twist the facts. The matter that had happened at 1,000 Treasure Pavilions auction have nothing to do with today's matter. Even if the Crown Prince and you already had a feud, it doesn't mean anything. Who doesn't know that you had embarrassed the Crown Prince at the Peach Blossom banquet? But this had no connection to the royal treasury being buried at all. Why is there no connection? Wang Yueli sniggered and couldn't be bothered with the Imperial Tutor as she turned to report to the Emperor. Your Majesty, this is what had happened. The Crown Prince had been upset at making a loss at 1,000 Treasure Pavilion and bore this hatred in his heart ever since. That day when he came to smash and rob 1,000 Treasure Pavilion, by the time my bodyguard Moyi had arrived, he had already transported the items away, and Moyi started to give chase all the way to the treasury. Wang Yueli took a glance at Crown Prince and continued, Moyi had just arrived at South Yu Kingdom along with me just a few days ago. He doesn't understand the situation in our country, and obviously he wouldn't know that was the royal treasury, so he foolishly followed them in. After he entered the place, he realized that Crown Prince had actually treated the royal treasure as his own residence's treasury, so whenever he needed money, he would just pilferage from there and used those money to feed his own army. Crown Prince thought that he had discovered his secret, so he wanted to silence him. Moyi had not returned after a long time, so I came along to check things out, following the secret markings that he left along the way, and found my way to the inside of the treasury. Crown Prince and Imperial Tutor knew they were not able to cover things up any longer and was afraid that I would leak out the plot that they were conspiring, so they decided to come out with a murderous scheme and activated the treasury's self-destruction mechanisms in an attempt to bury us alive inside. Luckily Moyi's power was just enough to help us escape from there. This is the entire process of development of the treasury, so Your Majesty, please investigate clearly. The Emperor's eyes widened, not believing what he had heard. Wang Yueli's story was convincing, and moreover the cause and effect was listed down clearly. Wang Yueli and Imperial Tutor had their own views, but Imperial Tutor said Wang Yueli had attempted to enter the royal treasury to steal, but he had insufficient evidence to back up his story. On the other hand, Wang Yueli had shown hard evidence of the accusation on Crown Prince of robbing Thousand Treasure Pavilion. In this way, Emperor was already leaning towards Wang Yueli's story. Crown Prince knew something was amiss and he was extremely nervous. If Emperor really had this thinking formed, then his status of Crown Prince would be gone with the wind. To him, he was most afraid of losing his status of Crown Prince. After so many years of studying in Celestial Light Academy, he clearly knew that there is no limit in the universe. There were many talents who were much more outstanding than him in the South Sky region. If he had no way of improving himself further, to be accepted as an outer disciple of the Celestial Light sect, then his cultivation route would probably come to a standstill at 4th degree realm. By then, his only choice would be to return to South Yu Kingdom. In this way, at least he would be able to ascend as South Yu Kingdom's emperor and his future would be filled with endless riches. But if he were to lose the royal throne's right of inheritance and driven out of South Yu Kingdom, then he would be no different from the normal vagrant practitioners. You can also listen on. The Crown Prince had already berated Wang Yueli several thousand times in his mind, and supporting his shaky body and clenching his teeth, he tried his best to clear his reputation in front of the emperor. Imperial Father, please don't be deceived by her slanderous report. The situation was different from how she put it. I was bitter about the unbearable grievances, so it was true that I brought my men to Thousand Treasure Pavilion to create a stir. But I have never ever plotted a rebellion. The Royal Treasury's incident was not due to me, it was all due to this slut Bai Ruoli. Empress also knelt down and lamented, "That's right, Your Majesty. Morjuan would never do this kind of thing. Enough." Emperor was extremely frustrated by their endless crying and complaining. Instead of coming up with evidence, all they could do was to lament. Did they think that he, as an emperor, had no brains and was unable to tell between right and wrong? Emperor swept the audience with a chilly glance and said, "Leah has already provided witness for her part, how about Imperial Tutor's evidence? I am not someone who just listen only, but without actual evidence, how can I ascertain that what you're saying is the truth?" The Crown Prince was dumbstruck. During the battle that day, Wang Yueli acted almighty and arrogant and even admitted that she had trespassed once into the royal treasury and took away several valuables. But she had not left any evidence behind. Even the other golden-scaled guards who assisted the Imperial Tutor to attack Moying were all buried alive in the treasury. Imperial Tutor creased his eyebrows, unable to make anything out. It was only at this juncture that they shockingly realized that they had unknowingly been led round in circles by Wang Yueli, falling into her trap. It was obvious that since Wang Yueli removed all the valuable treasures, she was also afraid of being discovered, so she had intentionally let the Crown Prince and Imperial Tutor out from the treasury. Her main aim was to make them her scapegoat. It was indeed their fault in the first place, as they had intentionally lured Wang Yueli's bodyguard into the royal treasury, so everyone would affirm that no matter what happened in the royal treasury, it was their wrongdoing. No one would ever believe that Wang Yueli was the one who had taken away all the treasures and destroyed all evidence by burying it into the ground. The Crown Prince and Imperial Tutor were not able to defend themselves, but Wang Yueli had more to say. The sides of her lips curled up ever so little as she slowly reported, "There's another important proof, and that is not many people knew about the self-destruction mechanism in the royal treasury, so why would it suddenly be activated? The Crown Prince and Imperial Tutor keep insisting that I'm the one who destroyed the royal treasury. But I'm not a member of the royal family, so how would I know such a huge secret?" Emperor was stunned as these words seemed to strike like lightning into his chest. That's true, the self-destruction mechanism in the royal treasury was the biggest secret concerning the fate of the nation, so how would a lass like Wang Yueli know about it? On the other hand, Imperial Tutor and the Crown Prince were mostly likely to have a chance to obtain information about this secret, especially the Crown Prince, as he had plenty of chances to enter the Imperial study and obtain the distribution map of the mechanism. So the person who activated the self-destruction mechanism was definitely not Wang Yueli. As for the Crown Prince and Imperial Tutor, since they had the guts to go to this extent and steal the distribution map from his Imperial study, They must be up to no good, and this evidently showed that they harbored plans to revolt. You can also listen on. Emperor was already sure on this point as his expression turned green, and clutching his chest, he stretched out his fingers and pointed at the crown prince, trembling non-stop and unable to speak. You are an unfilial son. The crown prince was frightened till his soul almost flew out of his body and explained repeatedly, Imperial father, I was not the one who activated the self-destruction mechanism, it's not me. It was Bai Ruoli. It's really her. It has nothing to do with me. However, no matter how he explained, Emperor refused to believe him. How could the Emperor ever believe that Wang Yueli was an armament master whose potential had gone beyond his imagination and was able to easily crack all of the royal treasury's mechanisms? In his eyes, Wang Yueli was merely a 14-year-old young lady. She had also not exposed her innate gift as an armament master, so who would even think of that possibility? Besides that, the mechanisms in the royal treasury were personally set up by a 7th-rank armament master when South Yu Kingdom was at its peak, and from then till now, several hundred years had passed. Unless a 8th-rank armament master were to show up, then there would be a possibility that these mechanisms could be cracked. But why would this type of person appear in South Yu Kingdom? Therefore, upon hearing his explanation, Emperor's anger was not appeased, but instead grew. Enough. You're such a pig-head. How can you even come out with this lie? This only shows that you're usually full of lies. I have been wrong about you all along and didn't manage to realize that you have improper intentions. No, it's not true. The crown prince was unable to explain himself clearly, and he had already used up all his energy as his entire meridians and acupoints were damaged. Under the psychological attack, he threw up a big mouthful of blood. Imperial Tutor hastily explained, Your Majesty, it didn't happen in that way. What the Crown Prince said was true. That time when we were about to be defeated by Bai Ruoli and her bodyguard, she was the one who activated the mechanism in the treasury. It really was her. Emperor sneered as he was completely disappointed by Imperial Tutor and the Crown Prince. He spoke in a frosty tone, Oh? It was Bai Ruoli? You meant that Bai Ruoli was able to fish out information from my mouth on how to activate the self-destruct mechanism, or are you trying to tell me that she is a 8th-rank armament master? Which possibility do you think it is? Neither. I don't get it as well, but that's enough. Stop spouting nonsense. Your schemes have been completely exposed and you still dare to deny. The Emperor was brimming with anger, refusing to listen to any explanation. He raised his hand and summoned the golden-scaled guards standing right by the main hall's entrance. Men, bring the Crown Prince back to East Palace and put him under house arrest. Summon the Minister of Internal Affairs into the palace. I want to prepare an imperial edict to depose of the Crown Prince. What? Imperial father, I'm innocent. The Crown Prince tried his best to stand up, but he was totally immovable. The golden-scaled guards moved forward and easily subdued him before carrying him down. Stop. All of you stop. Empress stopped herself right in front of the golden-scaled guards, but she was unable to block them, so she turned around and fell below the Emperor's feet, sobbing terribly. Your Majesty, you cannot do this to Morduan. Morduan he's been framed by Ruoli, that little slut. This little slut has treacherous intent. What she's doing is obviously to let Li Moying replace Morduan as the Crown Prince, so she set up a scheme to frame Morduan. Wang Yueli sniggered. What a joke. With Moying's innate gift and power, would he even bother about the South Yu Kingdom's throne? Only people with weak powers like Li Morduan would view the Crown Prince status as invaluable. Bai Ruoli, you little slut. Empress suddenly turned around and stared daggers at her. You can also listen on. The expression on Wang Yueli's face was as indifferent as before. Your Majesty, you're the motherly figure of the nation and is deemed as the role model for all the women in our nation. How could you act like a shrew and say out such obscenities, which are simply not suitable for the ear? His Majesty's face have all been lost by you. Enough. Men, bring Empress back to her palace for her to calm down. If she's not able to, then she don't need to keep her role as the Empress anymore. Emperor looking at Empress chillingly as he spoke in a frosty tone. In his heart, suspicions had already formed against the Empress. The Crown Prince was born by Empress after all, so if the Crown Prince had evil intents, would the Empress totally be kept in the dark? Before this incident, hadn't Empress murdered Empress Ming in order to stabilize her own position and almost killed Li Moying as well? Such an unscrupulous woman like her, would she really not have any inkling to this conspiracy at all? The Empress unbelievably widened her eyes as she wailed, "Your Majesty, I really am innocent." She had never, in her wildest dream, expect the Emperor to not only depose Crown Prince but also have the intent to depose her title of Empress as well. She tried her hardest and begged for mercy but was still dragged away by the golden-scaled guards. Before her departure, her gaze stopped tenaciously on Wang Yueli as her heart was filled with grievance. Both the Crown Prince and her position had always been well fortified, and the Crown Prince had always been the #1 talent, admired and praised by everyone in South Yu Kingdom. The Crown Prince was about to marry the talented consort and ascend the throne. Things had been going along smoothly, but the entire setup had been broken by Wang Yueli and Li Moying. How did it end up like this? She was really not resigned at all. But no matter how unresigned she felt, there was nothing she could do about it. Wang Yueli's gaze was icy cold, and when their gazes met, she didn't speak a word more. She had always been lazy to spend any time talking to losers. Pitiful people must have some hateful aspect. Especially for people like Empress, she was only courting trouble for herself. Emperor watched as Empress departed and turned his gaze towards Imperial Tutor. "Imperial Tutor, you've made me so disappointed. Since you had contributions to our South Yu Kingdom, I don't want to excoriate you further, but from now onwards, choose either to retire in South Yu Kingdom and not dabble in court affairs in future, or, please kindly leave South Yu Kingdom." Emperor naturally knew that since they had already shed all pretenses of cordiality, leaving the Imperial Tutor around would be a hidden threat in future. But Imperial Tutor was after all a 4th-degree realm expert and was someone who could be easily dealt with. If one was careless, not only were they not able to capture him, he might exact revenge in different ways in future. To prevent him from doing something desperate after being cornered, Emperor could only banish him to end this matter. But even so, Imperial Tutor was enraged. "What? You dare to treat me in this manner? On what basis? Just because you are the Emperor, you think I'm really afraid of you?" Outraged, Imperial Tutor snorted heavily and unleashed the profound energy in his body. Intense pressure instantly surrounded every corner of the main hall. Everyone present started to clutch their chests as they bent over. Imperial Tutor's lips curled into a chilling smile. A bunch of trash. They actually wanted him to leave South Yu Kingdom. However, his smile congealed at the very next moment, because another jet of profound energy, more intense and purer than his, came shooting towards him. The profound energy that Imperial Tutor unleashed was forced back, and it heavily impacted his meridians, agitating the Imperial Tutor to vomit out a mouthful of blood. Who exactly are you?" Imperial Tutor gazed warily behind Wang Yueli. That bodyguard who kept close to Wang Yueli kept his power hidden and was extremely respectful to her. "You can also listen on." But his power was astonishing. That day in the royal treasury, Imperial Tutor and the rest had thought that under the assistance of the mechanisms in the treasury, they estimated that they would only need a quarter of an hour before they could take him down. However, Moyi had persisted with them for several hours, and with Wang Yueli's aid, he had managed to defeat all of them. Today had been the same. He had stayed behind Wang Yueli quietly, to the extent of being an invisible man, masking his existence from everyone. But the minute he stuck, it had been so powerful that Imperial Tutor was not his opponent. Moyi kept silent, and after Imperial Tutor had vomited blood from his injury, he went back to his position behind Wang Yueli. Wang Yueli smiled indifferently. "Imperial Tutor, are you talking about Moyi? He is merely a bodyguard." Merely a bodyguard. When everyone in the main hall heard that, they could not help but wipe the cold sweat off their forehead. To be able to put pressure on the Imperial Tutor easily, this quiet man must at least have reached a cultivation level of 5th-degree realm. 5th-degree realm experts were widely valued by everyone everywhere. Wasn't Imperial Tutor, who was only at 4th-degree realm, doing rather well in South Yu Kingdom, becoming the #1 important minister? If it was a 5th-degree realm expert, things would be even more different. Wang Yueli could actually find such a person to be her bodyguard. And for the other party to be so respectful, and it was respect right out from his heart. How was she able to do it? Wang Yueli didn't bother to explain and only replied, Imperial Tutor sir, you have heard His Majesty's words. I'd advise you to respect His Majesty's decision and leave South Yu Kingdom on your own accord. Otherwise, I don't mind letting my bodyguard to help you with it and send you off personally. However, he's not someone gentle, so by them, Imperial Tutor might not be feeling so happy. Not only unhappy, it would be simply asking for his life. Imperial Tutor recalled that fateful day in the royal treasury. When Moyi struck out, he had tied so many of them into a rice dumpling and put Crown Prince into a gunny sack, dragging him all the way from his palace to the treasury. Imperial Tutor's face turned green as his eyebrows twitched subconsciously. Terrifying, too terrifying. This wretched lass's bodyguard had indeed gained some knowledge from her, as he was as sinister and cunning as she was. Recalling to this point, Imperial Tutor had not dared to be rash. He swept his sleeves heavily. All right, I will leave now. Today's matter, I will keep it at the back of my mind. Even if you come begging me in future to return, that's plain wishful thinking. Wang Yueli smiled sweetly and replied, don't worry, no one will be that desperate, Imperial Tutor. Oops, that's not right, you're no longer the Imperial Tutor. Old man, be careful on your way out. You're so old already, so don't blame it on me if you fall or bang anything on your way out. Imperial Tutor was already on his way out of the main hall, but when he heard these words, his legs stumbled and he almost fell over. He turned around and gave Wang Yueli a ferocious stare but didn't dare to say anything and left dejectedly. After this farce had ended, Wang Yueli didn't want to stay any longer and immediately requested to leave. In one day, Emperor had deposed of Crown Prince and Empress and banished the Imperial Tutor. This was the most shocking matter in the entire South Yu Kingdom. The palace had immediately turned disorderly. On Huang Yueli and Mo Yi's way out from the royal palace, they had already seen several chaotic scenes. However, these had nothing to do with Huang Yueli. She and Mo Yi headed back to Valiant Martial Manor and as expected, she received another gaze of worship from Mo Yi. You can also listen on. Third Miss, you're indeed an outstanding intelligent person. When I saw the Crown Prince and Imperial Tutor today, I had thought that the matter in the royal treasury would be exposed and we would need to kill our way out. I never expect that with your words, not only did you foil Imperial Tutor's plot, but also deposed the Crown Prince directly. Mo Yi's praises had indeed came from his inner heart. Before this, the most black-bellied and resourceful person he had ever seen was Li Moying. In Mo Yi's eyes, there was no woman who was worthy of his master. At most, they could only try to stay within the range in terms of innate talent in cultivation. As for other aspects, they don't even need to wish for it. But as fact had proven itself, there were still women who were worthy of Li Moying. Besides that, his master's sight was especially good. He had actually sought Huang Yueli, a talented young lady from such a small place such as South Yu Kingdom. From Mo Yi's view, no matter in which aspect, both of them were extremely compatible. If there was something to pick about, it would be Huang Yueli's looks because it could not match up against Li Moying. But not knowing if it was his misperception, but he felt that these few days, Huang Yueli seemed to look much prettier than before. Actually Mo Yi had not known about this. Huang Yueli's looks were not born in this way but was due to the intensity of the flame spirit physique. It not only suppressed her cultivation, it had also altered her looks. With every advancement that Huang Yueli went through, her looks would also change. Like a flower bud gradually extending its petals, slowly bit by bit, blossoming into an unmatched magnificence belonging to her alone. Huang Yueli smiled and said, that was just an appetizer, it was mainly because the few of them were too dumb. Brother Mo Yi, I'm going to feel embarrassed from your praises. Mo Yi laughingly shook his head and didn't speak any further. But he had already decided that he must write Li Moying a letter today, to tell him about Huang Yueli's performance. He believed that his master would be very interested to know what had happened. After the Crown Prince had been deposed, there was an upheaval in the entire nation. There were discussions amongst the people, making guesses that after Crown Prince's loss of power, which prince would replace him to become the new crown prince. Li Moying was the hot favorite because his power was absurdly strong that the other princes were not on the same ladder as him. In many people's eyes, he was inevitably the next choice for crown prince selection, and as for Wang Yueli, her status had naturally been raised to the future crown prince consort. At the present moment, people from all walks of life used different ways to link themselves to Wang Yueli, and the number of people who were trying to fawn on her had increased, so Valiant Marshal Manor's front yard was as busy as a marketplace. Even so, Wang Yueli was unaffected since the beginning, as she had already passed the entire matter to Cai Wei and Moyi to settle, while she had shut herself into closed-door cultivation in the backyard. Besides cultivating, she had also been pondering on the treasure that Bai Liu Feng had left for her. The jade token that she had retrieved from the blood feather silk cage previously was the only clue. On this particular day, Wang Yueli brought out the jade token, and while she was about to carefully inspect it when Moyi coincidentally walked in. When he saw the jade token in Wang Yueli's hand from afar, Moyi let out an astonished expression. Wang Yueli realized that something was wrong and asked puzzledly, "Brother Moyi, what's wrong with you?" Moyi pointed at the jade token and inquired, "Third miss, why do you have that thing?" You can also listen on. Wang Yueli was stunned momentarily, and following that, her eyes sparkled. Hearing Moyi's tone, he seemed to know the origins of this jade token. Wang Yueli hurriedly questioned, "Brother Moyi, do you know something about it?" Moyi took the jade token in her hand, and against the light, he inspected carefully before speaking out, "This jade token is Celestial Light's core student identity token." Wang Yueli was dumbstruck. She had assumed that the item Bai Liu Feng had left was an exceptional treasure or some high-level treasure box key, but in the end, it was just some school's identity token. This type of identity token was available in every school, so not only was it used to identify the identity of the student, it also recorded the student's grading in that school. It was really some lousy thing that you could find on the streets. Even if Celestial Light Academy was the most famous school in the South Sky region, but this thing was still worthless. Moyi left the jade token on the table, pointed to the back of it and continued, "Do you see the word Celestial Light here? Third miss, had you never considered this before? Moreover, do you see the figures indicated here? The number 1 on the identity token means this is the number 1 core student in the Celestial Light Academy, who is quite an authority. This identity token of yours, where did you get it from?" Wang Yueli's eyes widened with surprise and seemed a little blurry. "This means..." "All right, I had thought differently. To tell you the truth, this identity token was left to me by my father, saying that he had left a number of treasures for me, and the only clue is this jade token." Moyi was dumbstruck. "This is Marquis's Bai's remnant." "That's right," Wang Yueli nodded. "That year, my father was a 7-degree realm expert, and the things he had left behind for me, which I had thought would be something valuable. I had made a guess previously that this might be the Celestial Light Disciple's identity token, but I saw junior brother Luo's identity token and it didn't look like this. I had never considered the possibility that this would be the Celestial Light Academy's identity token. When Moyi heard that this item was left behind by the future father-in-law of his master, he instantly felt somewhat scorching and hurriedly and carefully placed the jade token back. "Third miss, this identity token is an exceptional item. Celestial Light Academy is after all a place where Celestial Light Sect sought South Sky region's talents, and to be able to be placed first in the ranking among the core disciples, one must definitely be an exceptional talent. The only thing is, such a talent would surely be taken into the Celestial Light Sect as an official disciple, but why didn't Marquis Bai join the Celestial Light Sect? Could it be that this identity token is not his? This I'm not sure. My father had already gone missing when I was still very young." Wang Yueli shook her head as she explained. Just as the both of them were conversing, Cai Wei was delivering snacks and overheard their conversation and couldn't help but to join in. "Third miss, I've heard other people talk about this matter previously." "Oh." Both of them looked towards her. Cai Wei continued, "Marquis Bai was a student of the Celestial Light Academy that year, and during the entrance exams, he came in first. In the entire of South Yu Kingdom's history, this was the first time, so it was rumored to have caused a huge commotion. The late emperor had personally conferred the horizontal inscribed board to commentate him, and it is exactly that piece that is hung in the manor's main hall now. Wang Yueli was surprised slightly. So it was like this. Since that's the case, that it all matches up. She flipped the jade token around, and after inspecting it for a while, she inquired, Brother Moyi, the word celestial light on the back refers to celestial light sect. Then what do these numbers on the front represent? Surely it cannot be the results that my father had obtained that year in the academy, right? You can also listen on. Moyi's face revealed an extremely puzzled look as well, and after staring at the jade token for quite a while, at least he still shook his head. This? I do not know, perhaps it's some clue that Marquis Bai left. Wang Yueli couldn't hide her disappointment. After figuring out for so long, I still don't know what my father wanted to tell me. Sigh, if he wanted to leave something for me, why would he come out with a riddle? He should just directly give me a treasure map. Moyi consoled, Marquis Bai had your considerations at heart. He might be afraid that you're too young when he left you the items and it might end up in the hands of bad people. Wang Yueli said, I understand the meaning behind it, but, in this case, I will need to spend a lot of time trying to find the treasures that father had left, and I don't know what he's trying to tell me exactly. Moyi thought for a moment and suggested, why not we inform Master of this matter? He and Celestial Light Sect have some connections, so he might be able to find out more things. This was the best opportunity to curry favor with his future mistress, so Moyi left that if he could help Li Moying grasp hold of this matter, it would make his master extremely delighted and see him in new light. However, Wang Yueli frowned and replied, no need. This matter. I will handle it myself. Li Moying has his own matters to settle. Who knows if the matter he had to deal with previously when he rushed back to the sect has been settled, so I don't want to trouble him. Wang Yueli subconsciously rejected Moyi's suggestion. During this period of time, she had been intentionally avoiding Li Moying. Li Moying had written a letter to her twice, and when Moyi brought it to her, she didn't read it, so naturally she didn't give him any reply. Since it was decided that she would draw the line between Li Moying and herself, she would not seek Li Moying's help. Otherwise the relationship between the both of them would never be cut, and she had no way of reciprocating Li Moying's feelings yet still seek his help. Wouldn't it be considered as using him? Moyi hurriedly replied, it's no trouble. Master had always been concerned about Third Miss's predicament. The sect's matters would be resolved sooner or later, it's just a matter of time. However, Wang Yueli didn't continue from there, and very quickly, she changed topics. Since there are no other clues, then the only way would be to start from Celestial Light Academy. I have thought of several ways to smuggle into Celestial Light Academy. Oh right, I had heard Bai Ruoli mention several times that she was preparing for this year's enrollment into Celestial Light Academy. When is the enrollment period? Wang Yueli summoned Cai Wei to go out and find more information. By evening time, Cai Wei reported back. Third Miss, I've already found out that all academies in South Sky region open their enrollment period for newbies in May, and by then, all talents from various countries in the South Sky region will gather in Sky Cloud City, fighting to be enrolled into the academy of their choice. There are quite a number of people in the South Yu Kingdom who will be traveling to Sky Cloud City to enroll. Oh really? Besides Bai Ruoli, who else will be going? Wang Yueli questioned. Cai Wei replied, there are many other people. All those under 16 years of age with at least third-grade talent are all preparing to try their luck at the Sky Cloud City, and fight for the opportunity to enter one of the academies. However, Celestial Light Academy is the #1 school in the South Sky region, and only second miss might have a slight chance of being selected. As for the others, they all know that they would not be selected, so they're preparing to enroll for other academies. You can also listen on. After Wang Yueli had obtained reliable news, she did a rough calculation. It was nearing the end of March, and there was slightly more than a month before the start of enrollment of Celestial Light Academy. From South Yu Kingdom to Sky Cloud City, the journey would take around a month or so. So to speak, the latest time they need to travel to Sky Cloud City would be at most 10 days later. She needed to use these 10 days of time efficiently. Firstly, Wang Yueli still needed to further stabilize her cultivation and also to refine a large number of profound armaments, in case of a possible period of need. After all, this trip to Skycloud City was one of the largest and prosperous cities among the South Sky region, and there were plentiful experts everywhere, unlike the small nation like South Yu Kingdom. In South Yu Kingdom, Imperial Tutor just used his status as a 4th-degree realm cultivator and he could already lord over the other people, but in Skycloud City, 4th-degree realm practitioners could only be considered as an ordinary cultivator. Only 6th-degree realm practitioners were barely considered as top exponents, while 7th-degree realm practitioners could also be found. To be able to have the power to take root in Skycloud City, one must have at least an 8th-degree realm practitioner as a base, and those influential powerhouses have several 8th-degree realm practitioners and sometimes even 9th-degree realm experts. Therefore, after entering Skycloud City, she must be extremely careful. So making preparations in advance was necessary. Besides that, Wang Yueli also selected some servants who had a much higher innate talent than the rest. Along with Cai Wei, she let them to undergo special training under Moying. She had been preparing to bring these people along to Skycloud City, so it was absolutely necessary for them to strengthen up. What was worth mentioning was under Moying's Spartan training and Wang Yueli's endless supply of third-grade pills, these servants managed to obtain a breakthrough within a short period of time. Especially Cai Wei, she was already a Qi Profound Realm 4th-level practitioner. 10 days passed by quickly. Wang Yueli settled the affairs in the manor and asked for manager Sun of the 1,000 Treasure Pavilion, and after exhorting repeatedly, she prepared for her departure for the next morning. However, on this evening when Wang Yueli was still packing her luggage, Moying hastily rushed in. Third miss. Something bad had happened. Wang Yueli seldom saw Moying so agitated and started to feel worried. Brother Moying, calm down. Tell me slowly, what had happened? Moying reported, earlier, Master sent a white-breasted falcon to deliver urgent news, saying he had met with some trouble in the sect and wants all of the dispersed shadow guards to return immediately. It's the first time I have received such an order, so from the looks of it, Master must have met with a mountable problem. Wang Yueli's brows creased when she heard that. How could this happen? There's actually something which could stump Li Moying. Will he be in danger? Just thinking that Li Moying might have met with some intractable trouble, or even be in danger, Wang Yueli started to tense up. Moying was filled with worries as well, but he didn't want to let Wang Yueli worry too much. Third miss, don't worry. With Master's capability, no one will be able to easily touch him. He should be able to successfully overcome those small matters. But in this way, I cannot disobey his commands and must return to the sect immediately. My apologies, I had originally promised to send Third Miss to the Skycloud City. Wang Yueli replied, mine is just a small matter, just going on a trip and attending the entrance examinations, not to go for some expedition trial, so I don't need anyone to send me there. It's better that you place your emphasis on Li Moying's matter first. You can also listen on. After consideration, Wang Yueli didn't feel at ease and said, do you want me to follow you back to the sect? I feel ill at least. Furthermore, even though my cultivation cannot be matched against yours, but in terms of array formation or refinery of armaments, I have some academic attainments, so perhaps I might come in handy. Moying shook his head and refused vehemently. Third Miss, I appreciate your good intentions and I thank you on behalf of my master. But Master had specially mentioned that he wishes for you to go for the entrance examinations in Skycloud City and not follow me back. Please don't be offended, but you're the love of my master's life, however your cultivation level is just too different. If anyone were to figure this out and use you to threaten Master instead, it would only make him divert his attention. So it would be best if you stayed behind. Wang Yueli pursed her lips indignantly, but what Moying said was the truth and she could not deny it. Her cultivation level is now at defensive profound realm 9 level, and in combination with the profound armament in her hands, it was more than enough to deal with 4th degree realm practitioners. But for enemies to be able to pressurize Li Moying would obviously be practitioners with 7th degree realm and above, which is clearly not on the same level as the current her. So if she were to insist on following, then it would really create problem for Li Moying. Hence she could only nod her head, that's fine as well. Please be careful on your trip. I have some profound armaments and hidden contraptions which I had refined, and pills as well. Do bring it along. Moyi hastily rejected. How can I take these? Third miss, you're already going to Sky Cloud City on your own. What if you meet with trouble on the way? Please keep these for yourselves. Don't worry, Master would definitely not get into any trouble. Moyi had flatly declined for the longest time, and eventually he only accepted some pills for emergency use. As for profound armaments, he rejected accepting it all the way. Before dawn, Missouri Yi had already left throughout the night. Wang Yueli looked at his departing silhouette, but her heart had already flown to thousands of miles away. She wondered how Li Moying was, to have issued an urgent order to recall all the shadow guards. He must be in exceptional danger. Wang Yueli frowned and felt that her heart was empty. Not knowing why, she had a bad premonition, as if something bad was about to happen. In a pavilion in the outskirts of South Yu Kingdom, a gracefully poised, youthful jade-like beauty leaned against the parapet, looking afar. Not long after, a man dressed in navy blue bodysuit made use of martial movements and dashed into the pavilion. The beauty hurriedly welcomed the man. Senior brother Zhuo, how is it? Zhuo Fangping let out a smile. Junior sister Murong is indeed spot on. After that shadow guard received your letter, he did not have any suspicions and thought senior brother Li had indeed gotten into trouble, so he had already left for the sect in the middle of the night. Murong Fei's lips curled up into a chilly smile. That's great, just great. In this way, there are no top exponents beside Bai Ruoli, that wretched lass? That is indeed so. Zhuo Fangping nodded. The guards and personnel maid that Bai Ruoli brought along had terrible cultivation levels, and only that shadow guard had exceptional cultivation. Now that he had left, Bai Ruoli is now at the mercy of others. Murong Fei agitatedly walked back and forth in the pavilion as she couldn't help but broke out into a wide smile. Things are going very smoothly. Senior brother Zhuo, it's all thanks to your help. Now once Bai Ruoli leaves the kingdom, then you can take action. A murderous intent flashed past Murong Fei's eyes. Dared to snatch her man? This slut was simply looking for death. You can also listen on. Zhuo Fangping was puzzled and inquired, Junior sister Murong, Bai Ruoli is just a second-degree realm practitioner and her power is exceptionally low, so to kill her takes no effort at all. I can help you kill her immediately. Why should we wait till tomorrow? Murong Fei shook her head. Senior brothers were, there's some things that you don't know about, things are not that simple. Anyway, please do as I say. Once the matter is done, you will have my utmost gratitude. Naturally, there was some reason to not harm Wang Yueli in South Yu Kingdom. As South Yu Kingdom was Li Moying's hometown, so he would have planted spies who others don't know about, and if they left out a loophole, it would be easily figured out by him. Even Murong Fei would not be able to take on Li Moying's anger, but there was no reason to let Zhuo Fangping, the scapegoat, know about these. Saying that, Murong Fei's pair of autumn watery eyes affixed onto Zhuo Fangping, as her deep red cherry lips curled up slightly, revealing her teeth as she smiled. Thank you, senior brother Zhuo. That sweet soft vocal seemed like a strong whiskey, making one intoxicated. This was the first time Zhuo Fangping had smiled so sweetly at him, so he was exceptionally delighted as he felt dizzy, without a care for anything else. Don't mention it, it's my honor to be able to assist junior sister. I don't need any thanks. If junior sister had uses for me, I'd already feel very happy. Looking at Zhuo Fangping's infatuated gaze, Murong Fei sneered secretly in her heart. Such a foolish man, just one smile was enough to hook him. What was the point? Only Li Moying, that icy cold frost, aloof arrogance but unexpectedly strong, so strong that under one glance, one would tremble from head to toe. Only a man like this was compatible for her, Murong Fei. And that wretched lass actually hoped to become Li Moying's fiancé? The consequence of dared to fight for a man with her could only be death. On the second morning, Wang Yueli had woke up early as she prepared to set off. She brought along Cai Wei onto the carriage and also brought along some servants who mounted the horses, following behind the carriage. The carriage went along the official route ahead and set off towards the outskirts of the nation. From afar, she could hear someone crying. Wang Yueli lifted the curtains in the carriage, and upon looking outwards, she saw some familiar figures. Seventh Princess, Bai Ruoli and Imperial Tutor stood by the side of a carriage. On the other side was the Empress. As she was crying, she used her handkerchief to wipe her tears. Swear, who knows how long later will you return from your trip to Celestial Light Academy? Your mother is spending her every day like years in the palace, and your royal brother had his meridians damaged for a second time. Even 5th grade pills are not able to repair his injuries. Not that his deposed from the crown prince title, he now spends his days in the palace like a dead person. As for your imperial father, he doesn't even give a hoot about us. Li Shuer held Empress's hands as her eyes welled up with tears. Mother, don't worry. After I get back to Sky Cloud City, I'll definitely seek Master for help to see if he can cure Royal Brother. So both you and Royal Brother must not be disheartened. Don't worry, it's never too late to exact revenge. I heard that Bai Ruoli is going to Sky Cloud City as well to enroll for Celestial Light Academy. What kind of place is Sky Cloud City? It's not a place for that wretched lass to throw her weight around. When we're there, I have many ways to take care of her. The Empress wiped off her tears. I can set my mind at ease hearing you say these. You can also listen on. Imperial Tutor took a step forward and comforted Empress. Your Majesty, don't be too upset. No matter what, Morjuan is my disciple, and when I'm out, I'll also think of ways to seek pills for his treatment. Morjuan has outstanding talent, and once he had healed his meridians, he will be able to continue cultivating, going after the peak. Empress wiped her tears. Morjuan had been taken care of by Imperial Tutor since young, but this time you had been implicated and forced to leave South Yu Kingdom. As his mother, I really feel bad about this. Imperial Tutor replied, What are you saying, Your Majesty? My departing from South Yu Kingdom has nothing to do with Morjuan. It's entirely Bai Ruoli, that wretched slut's fault. Wait till we reach Sky Cloud City and see how I deal with her. Saying that, Imperial Tutor turned towards Bai Ruoli. Chia, you're my youngest disciple. This time, I have brought out my aced quality cultivation methods and pills, so you must not fall short on your resolution and win some face for me. When you have reached Celestial Light Academy, you must excel over that slut and let her know that there's someone mightier out there. Bai Ruoli's eyes were filled with hatred as she replied in a low tone, Master, rest assured that Chia will definitely work hard and not lose to her. Bai Ruoli had just finished her sentence when she heard a sneering sound from nearby. The few of them didn't expect that anyone would come to the outskirts so early in the morning and even dared to sneer at exponents with status and power like them. They turned their heads and was just about to teach the fool a lesson, but when they saw the person, they all became stunned. Right in front of them was a lavish carriage, and when the curtains was unveiled, a captivating and dainty beauty revealed a young face. Right on front of their eyes was the person they had a deep hatred for, Wang Yueli. Their eyes seemed to spew out flames of fire as they started intently at the young lady ahead. Bai Ruoli. It's you. Why are you here? How dare you even appear in front of us? Wang Yueli was questioned with everyone talking all at once, but she smiled frivolously as though she didn't feel any pressure at all. Are you making jokes? This route is so wide, and did they mention that only your carriage is allowed to cross? Why can't my carriage pass by here? But I'd never expected such a coincidence that we'd set off to the Sky Cloud City together on the same day. This is really ape's manure. The few of them were infuriated to the point of being unable to speak. Who would want any fate with her? Who? This wretched lass was born to curb them, and whoever went against her would have bad luck. Even though they were pretty impressive earlier, with everyone swearing that they would not Wang Yueli have it easy, but when they had really met her, without any exception, all of them felt nervous inside, and subconsciously didn't want to confront her. It could only be said that Wang Yueli had already tricked them till they're really frightened. Just standing there alone and not doing anything was enough to give them tremendous pressure. Not long after, 7th Princess was the first to break the silence and yelled, Bai Ruoli, what do you mean? I think it must be intentional, right? You intentionally set off on the same day as us with the intention to jeer at us. What? Do you think that just because you'd broken to the second-degree realm, You're considered as South Sky region's #1 talent. Let this princess tell you, in Sky Cloud City, individuals with innate talents higher than you are everywhere, so don't be too delighted for now. You can also listen on. Wang Yueli's lips curled slightly and swept Li Shuer a glance. That glance was filled with contempt and disdain and almost made Li Shuer jump in anger. Looking at Li Shuer's slightly flushed face, Wang Yueli continued, "Firstly, you're no longer a princess, so stop using this princesses to address yourself every single time you open your mouth, which is simply scorning His Majesty's authority." "You," Li Shuer suppressed her words. Wang Yueli continued hurriedly, "Secondly, stop plastering gold on your faces. Why would I intentionally want to jeer you all? 1, 2, 3, and 4, all 4 of you had been defeated by me, so why would I intentionally follow you? Do I even need to waste my energy?" When she said these, not only Li Shuer was upset, even Imperial Tutor and Empress were infuriated. However, Wang Yueli had not finished talking. "Thirdly, I had no intention to bother about you all, but each of you kept saying that you want to take care of me when we reach Sky Cloud City, to teach me a lesson. I feel that based on these words alone, I have to come and show my face, otherwise you might be mistaken that I'm really afraid of you. How about this? I'm standing here right now. Whoever wants to teach me a lesson, you don't need to wait till we reach Sky Cloud City. Come on and do it now." Her tone was light and the expression was tranquil and calm, as though she didn't put these few people in her eyes. The few of them present were raging with anger. All of them were of great stature and had always been respected and worshipped by others, so when had they ever been subjected to such ridicule? Moreover, the most infuriating thing was Wang Yueli was obviously despising them, and yet they were unable to retaliate because they really couldn't beat her. Even though they couldn't wait to kill her on the spot, but none of them could do anything to Wang Yueli. Amongst them, the most upset one was Imperial Tutor. He was a 4th-degree realm expert through and through, and especially in the past 200 years or so, he had always stayed in South Yu Kingdom and had been looked up at by everyone here. In his eyes, Wang Yueli was just a younger generation youth, and no matter how much innate talent she had, wasn't she only in 1st-degree realm? One finger of his was more than enough to crush her. However, this 2nd-degree realm youth had tripped him head over heels several times, and not only did he lose his reputation, he was also banished from South Yu Kingdom. The most infuriating thing was Wang Yueli actually treated him as her defeated foe, and the intonation she used with him was filled with contempt. Imperial Tutor's face turned steely green as he couldn't help but clutched his fists. The profound energy within his body was slightly uncontrollable and was gradually raging up, to a point of divulging outside his body. Bai Ruoli was standing beside Imperial Tutor, and when she felt the pressure that Imperial Tutor had unintentionally leaked out, her face turned pale and she took a few steps backwards, somewhat unable to hang on. Li Shuer had a shock as well and secretly tugged on Imperial Tutor's sleeve. In a low voice, she told him, "Imperial Tutor sir, you must not be rash. Don't forget, although this Bai Ruoli is only in 2nd-degree realm, but she had a 5th-degree realm bodyguard beside her. If you were to sow something to her now, it is simply looking for trouble and will give her a chance to embarrass you later. Please absolutely bear with this for now." Imperial Tutor had originally lost his rationality and just almost struck out against Wang Yueli. But when he heard Li Shuer's words, he seemed to have awoken from shock and broke out in sweat. He subconsciously turned to look at Wang Yueli and found that she was also staring at him. You can also listen on. Wang Yueli sat quietly in solace inside her carriage and stared at him frostily. Her expression was as per normal, as though she was not affected at all by the profound energy that he had unleashed. However, Li Shuer and the Empress, who were similarly 2nd-degree realm practitioners, had already turned pale. Imperial Tutor stared at Wang Yueli as a battle broke out in his mind. Of course, he naturally hated Wang Yueli and wanted badly to exact immediate revenge, but just as what Li Shuer mentioned, the bodyguard beside Wang Yueli was just too powerful, someone who he cannot afford to rile up. Imperial Tutor hesitated for a moment and gradually reclaimed his unleashed profound energy. With a steely green face, he snorted heavily. Immediately after that, he turned around and headed back to his carriage. Li Shuer and Bai Ruoli looked at each other in the eye, nodded towards Empress and hurriedly made their ways to the carriage. Even the Empress did not dare to continue staying here and hastily mounted her carriage, traveling towards the direction of the capital. Within a quarter of an hour, everyone seemed to have caught fire on their buttocks and ran away. Wang Yueli suddenly felt dull and putting down the curtains, she waved her hand. So disappointing, they left just like that. Earlier when I heard their overbearing tones, I had thought they really intended to rebel. Who knows that they are still hanging on to their usual way of bullying the weak. Really having a heart of a thief but no equivalent guts. TSK, not that I want to say them, but their resolution is so weak. Being beaten up by me is just a small matter. I'm afraid that their way of cultivation would be affected somewhat. She knocked on the wall of the carriage. Forget it, let's be on our way as well. The carriage started on its way on the path again. Cai Wei had been sitting in the corner of the carriage, and once she saw Li Shui's carriage disappearing in the line of sight, she patted her chest as she heaved a sigh of relief. Phew, at least we have shaken off 7th Princess and the rest. Earlier I was really scared that Imperial Tutor almost struck. Luckily he still doesn't know Brother Moyi had already left. If he knew, I'm afraid that we might have lost our lives earlier. That was simply too dangerous. Wang Yueli swept her a glance. What? You're looking down on your miss. Isn't he just a 4th-degree realm old man? What's so great about that? Towards this kind of old fool, he's still beneath your miss. Cai Wei coughed, drying, and quickly added, Yes, miss, you're the #1 talent in our South Yu Kingdom. Naturally you're extremely powerful. She avoided the heavy topic, and although on the surface she was praising Wang Yueli, but if one were to pay attention closely, one would be able to tell that she did not believe what Wang Yueli said one bit. But it's no wonder, because in the eyes of a normal person, 4th-degree realm practitioners were very powerful and Wang Yueli was just in 2nd-degree realm. For her to leapt 2 huge realms and challenge the famed Imperial Tutor? It's simply daydreaming. Wang Yueli casted Cai Wei a glance, and although she knew she didn't believe what she said, she didn't explain further. The carriage was speeding on the pathway for an entire day and night, and besides stopping to make their meals, they didn't make any additional delays. It was until at night, when the party had finally reached a small town. Wang Yueli took out her map and said, Let's take a rest here today. According to the signs on the map, this should be the only town in the surrounding area that we can rest for the night. Out of this area, we will need to travel 500 miles before we reach another village. Otherwise we will need to camp out in the wild. Cai Wei looked around and excitedly pointed towards the front. Third miss, there seems to be an inn up ahead. I shall go and reserve a room now and let the inn receive us. You can also listen on. Cai Wei went to the inn to book a room, whereas Wang Yueli went window shopping around the small town. This was a habit that she had built up from her past life. No matter where she visited, she would go for a tour first. No one could be sure that in these remote little villages or towns, there wouldn't be any rare speciality or materials. Many top-quality materials in the Sky Emperor City were hyped up to rocket-high prices, whereas it could be easily purchased at a very low price at its place of origin. This time, Wang Yueli's luck had indeed been not bad. Hidden in a corner of the bazaar at a little stall, she collected a 4th-level fire attribute material, firestone. Although this material's level wasn't too high, but it was extremely rare, and to be able to sweep in so much stock at such a low price, it was unexpectedly surprising. After she completed her shopping, she headed towards the inn that Cai Wei spoke about. Who knew the minute she had just walked to the entrance, she already heard disputes. How can you all do this? We were obviously the first to reach here. Oh, of course we need to abide the first come, first served rule. All of you are so unreasonable. When our third miss returns, she'll teach you a lesson. Cai Wei's voice contained traces of timidity, but she still resolutely took her stand. Shut your gap, you're just a lowly servant. What right do you have to speak to this princess? And you dare to snatch the room from me? Still not going to get lost? Then don't blame Bi for not showing mercy. Li Shui lowered her chin as she said coldly. At the same time, her profound energy was released from her body, instantly forcing Cai Wei to take several steps backwards. Be you. But, I was the one who came first. And our third miss will be returning anytime. So what if she returns? Will I be frightened off by her? Li Shui's intonation was filled with disdain. Who does she think she is? She's just hugging on the Prince Yu Wang's leg. This princess will repeat myself again. Get lost quickly. You, Cai Wei resolved not to give in. A chilly frost formed in Li Shui's eyes as she was prepared to strike. Just at this moment, an icy cold voice reverberated from behind, "Stop." Following that, a jet of profound energy stronger than Li Shui's came streaming from her back. This stream of profound energy was like a vortex, spiraling towards Li Shui as the surround air started to become scorching hot. Li Shui's expression suddenly turned pale. She subconsciously stepped backwards in an attempt to avoid it. But the speed of this profound energy was simply too fast and she was not able to avoid it in time. Just as Li Shui was about to be struck heavily, hanging by a thread, Imperial Tutor suddenly dodged and just by a step, moved from the door and stood in front of Li Shui, moving her behind her. Wang Yueli's profound energy shot against a 4th degree realm practitioner, but it made Imperial Tutor creased his eyebrow only, and not causing much damage. Imperial Tutor lifted his head and on his wrinkled face, there were obvious signs of rage. Bai Ruoli, you actually dared to strike against the princess. How dare you not ignore the disparities and offend your superiors? What punishment do you think you deserve? Imperial Tutor unleashed the coercion power of 4th degree realm in an attempt to oppress Wang Yueli. However, Wang Yueli's face was filled with chilly sniggering. We're already out of the South Yu Kingdom, so what princess airs are you putting on? Your princess status is only equivalent to a village girl in the Sky Cloud City. What's more, haven't you already been deposed? Shut up. Li Shui stepped out from Imperial Tutor's behind. Bai Ruoli, don't think that I don't know. That 5th degree realm bodyguard didn't accompany you this time. You can also listen on. Without his protection, you'd better wise up and tuck away your tail. Li Shui snapped. Wang Yueli's brows lifted after she heard what she said. She was still thinking when these scums had met her earlier, they didn't even dare to lift a finger against her, so obviously they were frightened of her. But just a day had passed and Li Shui was now actively provoking her. The change was simply too sudden. So the reason was because they realized that Moyi wasn't around, so they had thought that she, Wang Yueli, was a little lamb waiting to be sacrificed. How naive and foolish was that? Wang Yueli replied, "Oh? How did you know that Moyi did not follow me on this trip? Perhaps he had just left for a little moment and after a little while, he will meet up with me." Li Shui saw her composed look and let out a snigger. "That's enough, stop pretending. I'm very certain that bodyguard didn't follow you here. Our carriage had been following behind you for the entire route and had not seen that black-robed bodyguard at all. What's more, there were only 2 ladies in the carriage. As for that well-built man, surely he won't squeeze into the carriage with you. As for your horses, they're not bad as well. There wasn't an extra horse, so that all goes to show that there is no extra person." Wang Yueli blinked and showed some signs of surprise. No wonder Li Shui was accepted as an armament master's apprentice. Her intelligence was indeed much higher as compared to Bai Ruoli. "You're dead sure?" Wang Yueli smiled unperturbedly. Li Shui retorted, "What? Still trying to put on a show to scare us off? I'm telling you, it's impossible. Today there's only one superior room left in this inn and you have to let us have it. Otherwise, don't blame us for not impolite to you. Without that black-robed bodyguard, you don't even have any 2nd degree realm practitioners under you, right? How are you going to deal with Imperial Tutor?" Wang Yueli nodded when she heard her clear and logical explanation. "Yes, your analysis is correct. According to your thinking, I should indeed tuck my tail away and hide myself. Not only should I give up the tomb to you, it would be best if I helped to pay for your bills as well. After all, you have a 4th degree realm practitioner whom I cannot afford to offend." Li Shui lifted her chin as she said arrogantly, "Since you're so tactful, we are not unreasonable people as well. Unfortunately, I don't know how tactful is written. Besides that, unfortunately, I'm not a reasonable person." Wang Yueli swept them with a cold glance as the smile on her face had completely disappeared. You can all scram, this superior room. I want it. Innkeeper, this is the payment for tonight, so give me the room key. She slammed an ingot of silver onto the table. Initially, Wang Yueli was not so finicky, and whether she stayed in the superior room or not, it wasn't something she was too bothered with. But since Li Shuai and Gang had intentionally provoked her, thinking to fight with her, then she purposely would not give in. She wasn't the Holy Mother, so how could she let those who intentionally provoke her so many times off that easily? Li Shuai's face turned green when she heard this. How dare you reject the proffered wine and ask for the punishment wine? Now that we've already left the South Yu Kingdom, even if you were to die in the middle of the journey, my second royal brother would not know that we did it, and will not exact revenge for you. If you know what's good for you, you better scram now. Innkeeper, this room belongs to us, so give me the key now. You can also listen on. Saying that, Li Shuai also smashed an ingot of silver onto the counter, which let out a bam sound. Both sides were ready to draw daggers and left the shopkeeper who was standing by side shivering. The shopkeeper was an ordinary person, and to him, even though the person was only a second-degree realm practitioner, he didn't dare to offend them. Now that there's so many of them and they were really to fight it out, it had long left him turn green with fright. Now that these young ladies were both powerful with exceptional looks, they had both slammed ingots of silver right before him and were staring at him with a pair of chilly eyes. It was as though if he made a decision which did not match their wishes, they might just struck out against him. Shopkeeper's heart was already weeping, thinking that these ladies were too much. If they wanted to fight, why can't they leave his little shop to settle this? He was only out to make a living, so who had he offended? However, both sides were pressurizing him, with no intent to let him off. Shopkeeper was filled with fear and trepidation as he assessed the situation and commented in a small voice. I say, this young lady, although you're a powerful practitioner too, but the senior's cultivation over there seemed to be much higher than yours. You're still young, so why be discredited at this point of time? I shall pass the key over to them instead. These words were meant for Wang Yueli. After all, on this end she was a second-degree realm practitioner, while on the other end, there seemed to be several second-degree realm practitioners plus the existence of a fourth-degree realm practitioner. Wasn't there a huge disparity between the two powers? You could call him a wallflower, but he was just an ordinary man, and all he wanted was to protect his shop and his own life. You are much more reasonable than that little slut Bai Ruoli. Li Shuai's face broke out into a smile when she heard the shopkeeper said that. She glanced at Wang Yueli delightfully and stretched out her hand to retrieve the key from the counter. However, just before her fingers could even feel the key, it was snatched away by someone. Wang Yueli held out her hand and grabbed the key in her hand. You, let go. That's mine. Li Shuai stretched out her hand to snatch, but Wang Yueli's fingers contracted and held the key in her palm. At the same time, a jet of scorching fire attributed profound energy shot outward. Li Shuai knew things were going astray and also performed her profound skill, attacking her. Two gusts of profound energy smashed against each other within the shortest time possible, and immediately a winner was born. Li Shuai couldn't match up against Wang Yueli's perfected profound energy and was defeated instantly. Fire-attributed profound energy pushed hard and struck onto Li Shuai's chest. Omph tilde tilde. Li Shuai let out a series of dull moaning as her body flew outwards uncontrollably. Seventh Princess. Shuai. Bai Ruoli, an Imperial Tutor, cried out in shock, and Imperial Tutor had on the first moment flew out to catch Li Shuai's falling figure. He pushed Li Shuai into Bai Ruoli's arms and without stopped, he shot out a palm strike towards Wang Yueli's chest. You little slut, it seems that you won't shed tears till you see the coffin. How dare you hurt her in front of me? Do you really think I cannot do anything to you? Imperial Tutor was infuriated and displayed his ultimate profound skill, Pentium Thunder Strike. This profound skill was surly and overbearing, savage and rigid, and had been the ultimate skill that Imperial Tutor used to gain fame 200 years ago. Utilizing one's ultimate skill to deal with a second-degree realm practitioner was originally an embarrassing matter. You can also listen on. However, at this moment of time, Imperial Tutor didn't have the time to consider if it was an embarrassing matter or not. He only knew that Wang Yueli, this lass, was extremely abnormal. No matter if her cultivation realm was much lower than him, but once he was not careful, the possibility of failing in her hands was very large. Imperial Tutor had used all his power in this one strike, but the ending was out of his expectation. Wang Yueli didn't hide nor move but only waved her hand gently. Imperial Tutor saw a silver light flashed past, and by the time he was able to see clearly, a total of 18 flying daggers had already formed into a battle array, sealing of his left, right, up and down with no possible way out. Imperial Tutor was not able to evade, and judging by the dull sea moss green shimmering on the flying daggers, it was likely tempered with deadly poison. One's life might be in danger if one had grazed just a little bit. Imperial Tutor had no choice but to forcefully retract his attack, turning into a defensive position. But in this way, although he had successfully avoided the flyer dagger's attack, the retraction of his profound energy irrigated back into his meridians, causing a backlash which resulted in him spitting out a mouthful of blood on the spot. Under another wave of Wang Yueli's deft porcelain hands, that thin like cicadas set of flying daggers retracted back into her arms. Imperial Tutor had suppressed the second mouthful of blood, but upon seeing this, he couldn't help but spat out that suppressed blood. Tch, just how powerful was that? A profound armament so powerful that could restrain a 4th-degree realm expert and to be able to retract and reuse. Wasn't she undefeatable with that set of profound armament? Ordinary 4th-degree realm practitioners had no possibility of going anywhere near her. Where on earth did this lass gotten such a high-level profound armament? Was it Li Moying who had gifted it to her? Never in his wildest dreams would the Imperial Tutor ever thought that Wang Yueli was a 5th-rank armament master, so she had refined plenty of items like this, in various patterns as well. If Imperial Tutor refused to give in and continued to fight it out with her, she didn't mind to offer him the chance of trying it out individually. Luckily, Imperial Tutor weighed the pros and cons and felt that it was not advantageous to go into a conflict with her in this little town, so he managed to oppress his anger. Humph, such an ill-bred lass. No matter what, I'm still your senior. How dare you use your flying daggers against me? Do you even know a single bit of morals? Wang Yueli twirled the set of keys with her little finger and dangled it in front of her. Old man, you're too modest. If we're going to talk about upbringing and morals, how can I be compared to you? But I must still thank you for generously giving up this room to me. To refuse would be impolite, so I'll accept it. I shall not waste any more time and will be going ahead to rest. Grab your time wisely and find yourself another lodging. I cannot be of help. Li Shuer and the others stared at the set of keys hanging on Wang Yueli's slender fingers. That glare was about to give out smoke. Even Imperial Tutor could not gain any advantage over so, what more the others? So they naturally couldn't afford to be rash. They could only watch Wang Yueli walk up the stairs as she used the keys to open up the doors to the most luxurious guest room in the entire inn. Damn it! Li Shuer's expression turned ugly as she slammed her fist onto the counter. Bai Ruoli had a cold expression on her face as she watched the door of the superior room shut tightly. Master, what's going on? Don't tell me that even you can't do anything to that wretched lass, Bai Ruoli. You can also listen on. Imperial Tutor's face flushed into a shade of red when Imperial Tutor heard what Bai Ruoli asked. Dealing with her naturally can be done. That wretched lass's cultivation is far from mine, but she had several pieces of high-level profound armaments with her. I'm guessing that Li Moying left it in her possession as a form of defense, so if we were to go up against her directly, not only will loss outweigh gains, it will also delay the time we have to rest. Hearing that, Bai Ruoli and Li Shuer nodded their heads at the same time. This wretched lass had always been sinister. Although her cultivation was not high, but she brought along so many high-level profound armaments, not even knowing if she is able to draw out the greatest force of the profound armament. So weak, and yet she brought so many treasures, she should be careful of being mugged. Isn't that right? Her own power is sparse, and in terms of cultivation, she cannot even match me. She only knows how to hug second royal brother's thigh to gain status. I despise such people. Imperial Tutor heard their discussions and felt somewhat embarrassed. because only he knew the might that Wang Yueli unleashed seemed to carry a sense of someone who had once helmed everything in her hands, and as for her profound energy, the purity level was universally shocking. Even Imperial Tutor, who had cultivated for several hundred years, felt far more inferior than her. If Wang Yueli had not displayed her profound armament but directly accepted his strike, even Imperial Tutor could not tell who would have the upper hand. However, these matter would definitely not spill out from his mouth. Now that he was already been banished from South Yu Kingdom, he was already in dire straits, so he must never lost his face in front of Li Shuer and Bai Ruoli, these two lasses. Otherwise he might really not have any way out. After rounds of discussion, their angers were still not appeased. Imperial Tutor said, "Just let this wretched lass count her lucky stars today. It's impossible for her to on alert all the time. Now that we have confirmed that Shadow Guard is no longer by her side, then we will have plenty of chances on the route, so sooner or later, we will be able to find an opportunity to teach her a lesson." Li Shuer nodded as her lips curled upwards evilly. That's really great. She has so many high-level profound armaments, and it was obvious that she cannot retain it all. After we have dealt with her, we can make full use of it. That's a windfall. Yes, that flying dagger set earlier. I wonder which armament master had refined it. It looked simply mystical. We must put our hands on it. No matter what, night had fallen, and even if they wanted to continue on their journey, it was not possible. Li Shuer and the rest could only choose to settle down in a standard guest room. In the superior room, Wang Yueli was listening to Cai Wei's depiction of Li Shuer and the others' evil ways and words. "Third miss, you didn't see it with your own eyes. Seventh princess and the rest have not given up yet, and earlier they were still discussing downstairs that next time we meet on the route, they would find opportunities to teach you a lesson that you will never forget, and they even had their eyes on that set of flying daggers that you own, saying they would definitely lay their hands on it." That tone sounded like third miss. Your profound armament was already in their possession. Pooey. Never seen anyone that thick-skinned before. Wang Yueli looked at her agitated look and found it amusing as she shook her head. All right, stop getting angry over such people. They can only daydream. If they have the ability, I would definitely. Saying that, Wang Yueli suddenly stopped talking. Her heart leapt as she subconsciously gazed towards the main door, and her eyebrow was slightly creased. You can also listen on. Cai Wei was shocked by her abnormal look and hurriedly questioned, Third miss, what happened to you?" Cai Wei stared at the entrance for a moment, suddenly got up and walking to the side of the door, she pulled it open. The corridor outside the room was empty. She put her head out to take a look at the surroundings but didn't see any suspicious figure. Wang Yueli closed the door firmly and walked back to her original seat. Her expression seemed to be lost in thought. Cai Wei was frightened and quickly inquired again, "Third miss, what's the matter with you? Is there really someone outside the door?" Wang Yueli shook her head, "Nothing, perhaps I'm just too sensitive and had some misperception." However, after the candle flame extinguished, Wang Yueli laid on the bed and another weird feeling appeared, as though she was being spied on. But yet she was unable to pinpoint what was wrong. She had been vigilant and didn't sleep too deeply for the entire night. Until the next morning dawn, nothing had happened. Could it be that it was really my misperception? She shook her head, trying to sway the distracting thoughts away. Early next morning, Wang Yueli led her men onto the route to continue their journey. This time, she could clearly see that Li Shuer's carriage was following right behind them. The distance was not too near nor too far, but no matter how they tried, they could not shake them off. Wang Yueli knew what they had in their minds. She gauged that they were waiting for an opportunity to assassinate her and mug the profound armaments in her possession. Towards this sort of thinking, Wang Yueli only found it amusing and didn't put it on her mind. The more worrying thing was the weird feeling that she encountered last night. Even though she couldn't find the cause, but her many years of past experience told her that there was a problem somewhere. It was noontime when the carriage halted for a rest, and under the shade of a tree, they stopped to groomed, ate and rest for a little while. Cai Wei distributed the flatbread and ham that she had taken out from her bag. Wang Yueli took a piece as well and was just about to deliver it to her mouth when her heart stopped at this very moment. An indescribable fear arose from her heart. She subconsciously turned around and at the same time, took out the powerful thunder flame ball, 3 pieces in total, and threw it behind her back all at the same time. Bam! 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 Shocking crepitation could be heard and intense flames immediately arose, shooting out into the sky. Amidst the flames, a sword tip suddenly appeared and with lightning-fast speed, pierced towards Wang Yueli's chest area. This strike was extremely fast and it was a swift and fierce attack. The strike was wrapped in powerful profound energy and the surrounding air quivered by the movements, letting out an ear-splitting sound of breaking the void space. After Wang Yueli threw out the thunder flame balls, the flying daggers followed next immediately and sword spells were consecutively launched. At the same time, her body was rapidly retreating and using a touch of her toes, she displayed her footwork as she retreated far away. She had displayed all her methods not to defeat the opponent but to delay the other party by a few breaths' time, so that she could have the chance to escape. The reason was because at the moment they crossed hands, she could clearly feel that the opponent this round was extremely strong and had already surpassed the boundary which she could handle. She had no chance of winning. Not only that, the chances of escaping was extremely little. At such a precarious moment, Wang Yueli's inner heart still retained calmness. You can also listen on. As the disparity between their cultivation levels were too huge, no matter how much effort she put into escaping, it was impossible to shake the opponent away. Although Wang Yueli had taken action first, but it could only stop the other party momentarily. Using just this bit of time, there was no way she could run too far a distance away. The disparity between their speed was too large. It would only take a short moment for the other party to chase up to her. Therefore Wang Yueli's line of sight had fallen onto the few carriages following behind them. She squirmed her eyes and thought secretly, "Who asked you to keep following me, even intending to scheme against me? Since trouble had come knocking on the door, for you to become my scapegoat is something you deserve." Without stopping, she displayed her footworks and rushed towards the direction of Li Shui's carriages. The unforeseen event that Wang Yueli met here was extremely sudden. Li Shui and the rest had seen it happening from afar, but before they could react, in that one instance of lightning and firestone speed, Wang Yueli had already flew charging towards them. It was until she appeared at the front of the carriage before the few of them made screeches of surprise. Wang Yueli directly stepped onto the carriage's roof and jumped ahead, and at the same time while leaping into the air, she continuously threw out several hidden weapons. The horses leading the carriages were in shock. One of the flying dagger which Wang Yueli threw out had stabbed deeply into the horse's back, and as the steed was in pain, it immediately raised its head, neighing non-stop and charged wildly towards the front. The horse leading the carriage charged out directly, totally uncontrollable. Those sitting in the carriage were already scared stiff. Li Shui shouted, "Stop the carriage! Quickly stop the carriage! Why are these horses running around wildly? Why are their speed getting faster and faster? Quickly stop, otherwise the carriage will overturn." The coachman convulsed with fear as he replied in a quavering voice, "Your Highness. Unable to stop. These horses seem to have gone mad, and we are going to smash against something." Bai Ruoli was tumbled into confusion. Imperial Tutor immediately stood up from his seat and tried to use profound energy to suppress the horse's movements. But it was all in vain. Just within a few breaths' time, the few carriages were smashing right towards Wang Yueli's killer, Zhuo Fangping. Zhuo Fangping had been concealing himself, and he finally found the best opportunity yesterday. In this desolate area outside the city, no one would notice if a few people had died. The most amazing thing was, as Imperial Tutor and several others were present, he only needed to kill everyone there and made it look like both parties had got into a conflict and ended up in mutual destruction. So even if Li Moying managed to find his way here, he could only accept this conclusion would not suspect him. Zhuo Fangping waited for Wang Yueli to stop and rest and put his greatest effort into this attack. Originally he was 100% sure that Wang Yueli would definitely die on the spot, not even able to make a cry for help, under that one strike of his. After all, the disparity between 2nd and 5th degree realm was too huge. Moreover, he dealt her with a secret hand and caught her unprepared. However, Reality seemed to be topsy-turvy from Zhuo Fengping's imagination. He was just preparing to go near Wang Yueli and, while concealing his presence, prepared himself for an opportunity to attack. But this young lady seemed to have noticed something and opened her eyes abruptly. Zhuo Fengping knew something was amiss and immediately chose to strike first. However, this lass's reaction was faster by 100 times of what he could imagine. It only took a blink of an eye where she had continuously threw out countless profound armaments, especially that powerful thunder flame ball, directly onto his face. You can also listen on. Zhuo Fengping had not expected such a matter to happen. Wang Yueli was already detected his presence even before he struck out. Zhuo Fengping was an extremely rare dark attributed practitioner, so in terms of concealment and assignation, he had an exceptional innate talent. Even same-level practitioners were not able to detect his presence. However, this seemingly weak lass, whom he could crush with just one finger, had actually discovered him. How did she do it? The more ridiculous thing was the profound armaments that this lass threw out were all 5th-grade items. The power concealed in these 5th-grade armament weapons were exceptionally high and were more than enough to cause damage to peak 5th-level practitioners. Luckily Zhuo Fengping was quick in his response, and after he immediately avoided the place where the thunder flame ball had dropped, otherwise his face could have been ruined. Even so, Zhuo Fengping's arm was grazed by a flying dagger and was bleeding. His face had also been hit by the ashes of the thunder flame ball's explosion and was full of dust, looking especially discomposed. Zhuo Fengping had never expected himself to be hurt by a second-degree realm lass. As one of the direct descendant disciples, not only did he have exceptional cultivation methods, profound skills, and treasures were much better than the others. So same-leveled practitioners were not his match at all. He had never imagined that this time he would be hurt by such a weak lass. Zhuo Fengping's expression turned ugly, feeling a loss of face. His intent to kill grew stronger and couldn't wait to tear Wang Yueli into 2 halves at the first moment possible. But Wang Yueli's reaction was simply too fast. At the time when she used the thunder flame ball to force his retreat, she had already flew a great distance away. Zhuo Fengping rushed out from the black smoke, feeling exasperated while chasing after her. Just as their distance was narrowing, Zhuo Fengping's eyes flashed a chilly glint. "You wretched lass. No wonder junior sister Moying want you dead so badly. You're not a good thing after all. Too bad. Today will be your death anniversary." Just at this moment, Wang Yueli's silhouette wavered and rushed into Li Shui's carriages. The horses leading the carriages instantly turned mad and ran wildly, carrying the carriage and collided towards Zhuo Fengping. The speed of the carriage was simply too fast. The wheels in the carriage sped so fast that dust from the ground made the visibility of the surroundings to become blurry. Zhuo Fengping's speed was extremely fast too, and by the time he had reached, even though he knew he would crash into them, there was no way to stop at all. Bam tilde tilde tilde. A huge sound reverberated and Zhuo Fengping had already collided with the galloping horse carriages. Profound energy was unleashed from Zhuo Fengping's body and instantly formed a protective bubble, encapsulating his entire body. But he flew several meters away from this impactful crash and simultaneously a mouthful of blood flushed towards his throat. He forcefully swallowed back that mouthful of blood but felt that his entire body was filled with pain. Apparently, he had sustained rather severe internal injury. However, with his 5th-degree realm power, this injury would recover in time and would not hinder his actions. On the other end, Li Shui and the rest were not that lucky. Their carriage was originally not any profound armament and was slightly toucher and lavish than usual. Upon the impactful crash against Zhuo Fengping, half of the horses that were pulling the carriages were dead as the body of the carriage completely split open. As for those sitting in the carriage, they were already tumbled in all directions by the sudden speed of the horses, and at this moment, all of them came rolling down the carriage. You can also listen on. To tumble down from a speeding carriage was an extremely dangerous thing, and even though those on the carriage were not weak practitioners, however, under the circumstances of being caught off guard, they were not able to deploy their profound energy to protect their body, so all of them fell heavily onto the ground. Besides that, as the speed of the carriage was extremely fast, after they fell onto the ground, They were not able to stop and started rolling several rounds far, far away before they collided with a thick, huge tree trunk. Bam! 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 A few dull sounds echoed as Li Shuai, Bai Ruoli and Imperial Tutor banged against the tree in succession. Their heads were bleeding from the impact, and as they spotted spinning stars, all of them fainted on the spot. As for their clothes, it had been tattered from the rough ground as they rolled past earlier, and all of them were half naked. In the process of the rolling action, several bones had been broken. As they were all practitioners, although heavily injured, none of them died. However, for the guards which they had brought along, around half of them had died instantly under just one strike from Zhuo Fangping. As Zhuo Fangping pressed against the dull pain on his chest, his lips let out a chilly smile. "You dare to obstruct my way, death is what you deserve. That wretched lass deserves to die even more. How dare you hurt me? When you fall into my hands, I won't let you die that easily. Just you wait." Zhuo Fangping's sinister laughter could be heard. Li Shuai had just regained conscious and was trembling with fright, afraid that she would incur Zhuo Fangping's wrath. However, Zhuo Fangping couldn't be bothered with them. In his eyes, they were so insignificant that their life or death didn't matter to him. What mattered the most was that he must quickly complete Murong Fei's orders and kill that resourceful country bumpkin. On both sides of the pathway was a dense forest. At this moment, Wang Yueli had already charged into the forest and still increasing her speed forward into the deep ends of the forest. Zhuo Fangping secretly hurled out a sentence that's bad. If this wretched lass were to run into the forest, then the variables would change. After all, there were many obstacles in the forest and were advantageous for hiding oneself. Although he was mighty and would still be able to capture Wang Yueli, but in this way, he would have to put in more effort than before. Zhuo Fangping immediately decided, and bearing the internal injury within his chest area, he sped up and started chasing after Wang Yueli. Escape! 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 The only thought that was in Wang Yueli's mind was to escape and quickly run away. Using the collision between Zhuo Fangping and Li Shuai and the rest, she practically used all her energy and ran madly, gaining several thousand meters of distance between them in that instant. But she was very sure of the disparity in cultivation between Zhuo Fangping and herself, so no matter how fast she ran or how many obstacles she created, it might end up in a waste of effort. However, she had no other choice. The only thing she could do now was to take one step at a time. After she had hidden herself in the forest, the leeway for her resistance would become much bigger as hiding spots were now easier to spot and she could make better use of the profound armaments in her possession. Hearing the screeching and cursing sound from behind, Wang Yueli increased her footsteps. However, the minute Wang Yueli entered the forest, her eyes suddenly turned dark. As thought night had fallen in that instant, she was not able to anything suddenly. The tall trees and all of the surroundings seemed to have disappeared. Besides that, the raucous noises from the surroundings have all disappeared as well and became exceptionally quiet, so quiet that it stirred up a sense of uneasiness in one's heart. The next moment, numerous white ghostly figures sprouted up from the darkness. A strange smile hung around their ghastly and deadly white faces, floating towards her. You can also listen on. The sound of a breeze could be heard by the ear, and moaning which could be seemingly heard at times could send chills right down the listener's spine. As the change of events was too sudden and the scenario was extremely shocking, if it had happened to any ordinary person, his spirit would probably have left his body out of shock. Even if one could maintain composure, but one would probably still be stumped by the sudden change of events. However, Wang Yueli maintained her calm and collected expression, not even showing any sign of distress. At the instant that darkness fell, she had already distinguished that it was not reality that was happening right before her eyes, and was likely to be some sort of hallucination. The aim of extending this hallucination was naturally to confuse her and ultimately delaying her escape. Hence, Wang Yueli didn't slow down and continued to head on forward, charging straight towards those horrifying spirits. Just at the moment where her body was about to collide with the spirits, Wang Yueli's wrist moved and took out a long piece of soft whip. Break tilde. That tone was clear and melodious, as though orioles leaving the valley, she drew a lining in the vast horizon. Following her voice, the soft whip thrashed across the front of the spirit. A shrilling shriek was heard as the spirit which was whipped split into two halves. Following that, it seemed to melt and slowly dissipated into the sky. Whip after whip, the spirits in front of her were gradually being smashed to pieces. Just slightly after a few breaths' time, those spirits which had obstructed her way were all eliminated and the sky slowly turned brighter and brighter, gradually restoring a sunny mid-afternoon weather. Wang Yueli's lips curled upwards slightly and increasing her speed, she slipped into the forest at top speed. Zhuo Fangping held his chest tight and felt another mouthful of blood surge upwards. This round, he couldn't bear it any further and spurted out a mouthful of blood. The expression on his face was a cross between anger and embarrassment. Damn it, how is this possible? Why was that wretched lass able to break my 1,000 demons illusionary field? Although my cultivation is not enough, but I had managed to train successfully the 1,000 demons illusionary field to a small realm. Even a 6th-degree realm expert would normally fall head first into this technique of mine. Her cultivation is only at 2nd-degree realm, so how could she escape unscathed? It was simply abnormal that this lass was so weird to the extreme, as though her existence was here to put other people down. The 1,000 demons illusionary field was a type of heaven-level lower-grade profound skill, and its might was extremely powerful. It was a skill which could only be practiced by dark-attributed physique practitioners. Using the adjustment of their dark profound energy, they were able to produce a terrifying illusionary scenario to confuse their opponent. If the cultivational disparity was too huge, they would be able to strip their opponent's compos mentis, thereby turning them into their plaything. Logically speaking, the higher one's cultivation was, the stronger one's willpower would be, and the higher the chances of defending against the illusionary scenes of the 1,000 demons illusionary field. For a 2nd-degree realm practitioner like Wang Yueli, it was already an amazing feat that she was not stunned into a vegetable after encountering into this scenario. Once the 1,000 demons illusionary field was utilized, it would require a lot of profound energy, and it was exactly because of this reason why Zhuo Fangping did not dare to use it too often. The only reason why he used this skill was because he was angered by Wang Yueli and he had prepared to torment her thoroughly after he had controlled her consciousness. Even if it did not work, he would be able to obstruct her way into the forest. However, from the way things had turned out, Zhuo Fangping felt a sense of shock once again. Not only did Wang Yueli not fall into his trap to be confused and become a retard, but on the contrary, her speed of escaping had not decreased any bit. You can also listen on. Before Zhuo Fangping could feel stunned, he had already saw Wang Yueli pulling out her soft whip and smashing fiercely outwards himself. If it had been others, they might perceive Wang Yueli as being pressed to the state of insanity and could only raise her whip in a disorderly manner towards those spirits. But to the originator of the evil 1,000 demons illusionary field skill, Zhuo Fangping could tell from one glance that every single whip that Wang Yueli made was coincidentally on the weakest point of this skill. Although her profound energy was not considered strong, but the accuracy of her attacks had reached 100%. The weakest point of the 1,000 demons illusionary field was being broken by her one after another, and finally, it had completely vanished. As for Zhuo Fangping, as his skill had been broken, he had once again suffered another backlash. In this short quarter of an hour, Zhuo Fangping had struck out consecutively and even utilized one of the skills which he was most complacent about. However, the result was, although Wang Yueli was put into a slightly difficult situation, but she had not even lost a strand of hair. Whereas for him, he had been fooled till ashen-faced and had sustained quite a substantial internal injury out of nowhere. Zhuo Fangping was both furious and anxious, and could not wait to tear Wang Yueli into pieces. As a 5th-degree realm practitioner, he was also one of the proud figures from a large sect. Would it even make sense if he could not even take down a 2nd-degree realm country lass? More importantly, his mission this time was because of Murong Fei's entrustment. He waited for so long before he finally had a chance to fawn on the goddess of his dreams, and if it was fouled up with neither rhyme or reason, then wouldn't he become a complete piece of trash in Murong Ni's eyes? This was a matter of a man's pride. The more Zhuo Fangping thought, the more anger he felt as he continued chasing after her, flustered and exasperated. But as he had been obstructed by Wang Yueli several times, and due to the backlash that caused a couple of breaths' time, that was more than enough time for Wang Yueli to escape into the forest. By the time Zhuo Fangping had entered the forest, Huang Yueli's figure could no longer be found. Zhuo Fangping sought high and low, but the surrounding shrubs were around a human's height tall and were extremely dense. Looking from afar, one could only see the hovering shades from the trees and not be able to tell clearly if someone was amongst them. As he walked into the forest, he shouted loudly, "Bai Ruoli, get your ass out here now. Don't think that you've hidden yourself and I won't be able to find you. I only need to use my soul trace and slowly search every inch of the forest, and sooner or later, I'll be able to whisk you out. If you are to come out by yourself now, I can still let you die a quick death. Otherwise by the time I find you, you will be in deep ***t. Zhuo Fangping threatened her, but Huang Yueli was no fool, so of course she wouldn't believe in his bullshit ***t. The only reply he got was the breeze gently rustling the leaves. Zhuo Fangping squinted his eyes slightly as a sense of urgency shot up in his heart. That wretched lass, could she had really slipped away? No, it was impossible. She had just ran into this forest and it was just 10 over breaths time earlier than him. No matter how far she ran, there was no way she could escape a huge distance away. At most she would still be in the vicinity of around 2 kilometers. What's more, this should be the first time that wretched lass had passed by this place, and this was not South Yu Kingdom, so she couldn't have set up any hidden traps in the forest, so she couldn't possibly have disappeared into thin air. Thinking of that, Zhuo Fangping set his heart at least and started to gather his qi and with rapt attention, used his soul trace to search the surrounding environment. Innate talents for cultivation and concentration levels differs among practitioners, and that in turn would affect the boundary of their soul trace. You can also listen on. As a 5th degree realm practitioner, Zhuo Fangping was at least able to sense the situation around him, but in order to conduct a detailed search, he would need to waste a lot of energy and time, which would multiply many times over. Zhuo Fangping had originally intended to use the scare tactic to save some energy, but Huang Yueli didn't fall for it, so he could only do the search slowly. But he believed that he would be able to whisk that lass out sooner or later. At this very moment, Huang Yueli was hiding behind a huge tree trunk. Her back leaned against the trunk and without a single movement, her eyes were shut and her breathing seemed to come to a halt as her body started to turn icy cold, as though she was gradually losing signs of life. In reality, the scenario that Zhuo Fangping thought was actually correct. Huang Yueli knew clearly that if things were to go on like this, she would eventually be caught. Moreover, she cannot run. Because if she did, Zhuo Fangping would be able to location her position immediately, and as long as the direction was correct, in terms of speed, she would definitely not be able to outrun him. That was why Huang Yueli only chose to conceal herself so that Zhuo Fangping had no way to seek her. But this was equally difficult as the soul trace of a 5th degree realm practitioner was very powerful. Unless one's cultivation level was higher than the opponent, otherwise, there was no way that one would be able to conceal one's presence under the opponent's fully powered search. Just as Huang Yueli was deliberating, suddenly she recalled that she had read a cultivation method in her previous life. This cultivation method was found during an expedition at an ancient mystic region in her previous life, also known as Shalonian breathing skill. Practitioners who practiced this Shalonian breathing skill are able to adjust the direction of the profound energy in their body to simulate a fake death scenario. Under any situation, if one was able to conceal their presence, then the enemy would never be able to locate them. This cultivation method was extremely functional and the results were shocking. If one could practice it to the highest level, even if it was a 1st degree realm practitioner, they would be able to successfully conceal their presence under the eyelids of 9th degree realm experts. However, in order to successfully practice the Shalonian breathing skill, one would need at least a 5th grade talent in Earth attribute. In her previous life, Huang Yueli had not been equipped with this talent, hence after she obtained the cultivation scroll for the Shalonian breathing skill, she had never once practiced it. However, she was different in this current life. As a complete attribute 9th grade genius, Huang Yueli felt that she should be able to acquire this cultivation method. The only fraudulent situation at hand was that she had never practiced this cultivation method before, so she had no prior experience. Now that she had to clasp Buddha's feet when danger arose, would it even be possible to learn this skill successfully within a couple of breaths' time? If this was told to others, They would surely laugh their heads off. Such lunatic ravings weren't even heard of. What a retard. But since things have come to such a stand, she had no other choice, so even if it was a dead horse, she would have to treat it like a living horse to treat. Wang Ruoli made a prompt decision and searched her memories for that Shalonian breathing skill. Luckily her memory had always been ridiculously strong, and even after so many years, she would be able to recall every single cultivation method that she had read through. She hastily forced herself to calm down and ignore the changes that were happening on the external world, blocking out Sua Fengping's blustering. The only thing she cared about now was the cultivation method. In a blink of an eye, she had already entered the mode of cultivation, silently absorbing earth attributes elements from the surroundings. Her profound energy flowed into her limbs and skeleton according to the guidelines from Shalonian breathing skill. Even she had not expected that things would be so successful. She didn't seem to expend much effort while practicing this cultivation method. You can also listen on. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.